States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so everyone's had a chance to look at the agenda. We have a few changes. Oh, sorry. Why don't you take that? Yes, I'm here.
Here.
Yo.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Great, thank you. So we have a few changes to the agenda. Anthony Rios is not going to be with us this morning, and I understand that Roxanne and Dr. Gao would like to change places in the order that they present. So do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I second it.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it passes. Approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at those? And I did have one question for Virginia. Under the new business, was the letter from Alex van der Velden. And I was wondering, should there be something in the minutes? I mean, it says we had discussion, but because it was a citizen communication that we saw, should we have something in there that just says that you responded to them? And I was thinking, for the record, to have something in there that,
Staff was directed to respond.
yeah, just something to that effect, since we are a citizen oversight committee, and I want to make sure that we're always responsive to citizens. Now, do I need to make a motion to that effect, or
Yes.
we can just make, okay. So I would like to make a motion that we add to the minutes that staff was directed to respond to Dr. Velden.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, do we have any other questions about the minutes?
Does that motion also approve the minutes?
Darn, I didn't say that, but yeah, that was my intent.
I move to approve the minutes as amended.
And I second
Second? All those in favor say aye.
it. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And our monthly progress report.
All right. Thank you. So we are proceeding with 3 positions filled, and there are 2 offers out there with the hope that those folks will start in September. We have a confirmed date on one, but not yet on the other. So looking forward to that. You have a handout. I'm going to have Courtney come up. So on the cost share contracts, we wanted to give you a quick update on where we are with those. Go ahead.
Okay, so on here we have year 0 projects, and they're color-coded. This is mainly for the interlocal agreements that I'm in the works for right now. You can see all the green ones. Those we either have most of the information or all of the information, and the interlocals are started. We have the grayish purple. Those are currently unknown. We're still trying to get information from the cities, and I'm still trying to get the interlocals started on those. As of right now, I believe all of these projects will still be happening, but I've just got to get the information in. And then we have the red, and those are 4 baffle box upgrades from Cape Canaveral that are withdrawn from the plan because they had a survey done and the water was too high to even put a screen in. It would be useless, basically. So those will be withdrawn, and you can see the sum of year 0, and it shows the pricing that has in the red with including the withdrawns, and then the one under that is the updated after the withdrawns are taken out. So if there's any questions.
What's the holdup on interlocal agreements with these cities?
I'm just waiting for information right now,
Are they engaging?
some of them.
Is there a
Perhaps the county could get grumpy?
So I sent a few emails, and when we had Courtney on board, Courtney was tasked with calling, so she's made quite a few phone calls, and we're now debating about whether to step those up to daily.
Okay.
Has
let me-
anyone talked to city managers?
Well, we met with city managers last week on a related issue, and I'm hopeful that they are getting more comfortable with the idea, but
I would gently suggest that the city managers and the mayors be contacted directly, and if it doesn't work from you, have Frank Plotty.
Yeah, let me know if Coco's a problem.
well, and Coco lost their staff, Laura Rankin, so
Okay.
Yeah, if you have a contact for me, I'll get with you later. I would love
Okay.
that because I'm currently pursuing that right now.
well, we're coordinating with their public works director.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
has no one to do the work to respond. So
Ah,
I think
okay.
it's those sorts of delays that we all struggle with.
Okay. And Cape Canaveral, you say the water is too high?
Yeah, if you, on the other side of the paper, there should be an email, and that is between me and one of the public works guys, and he states why. But they got the survey done after the fact, so they got it done after they applied for the projects, and then we would be installing a screen that would basically be useless because the box is just full of water.
So we're looking at alternatives to that screen design to see if
Yeah.
there's some other way to retrofit those baffle boxes that would provide nutrient removal benefits. And so maybe we can rescue these, but at the time that Courtney was contacting them for, their information, they said, oh, we're so sorry. The contractor has reviewed these sites and it's not going to work, so.
Okay. Yeah,
Just
Todd
one
has a
other
question.
piece of information as far as the responsiveness is, I think we talked about this a little bit, but let's please make sure that we're tracking that so that as we go into project reviews next year, because to me, that's a bit significant consideration as we rank projects, because if there's certain entities that are consistently being non-responsive and not delivering, then in my mind, I've got a lot lower interest in supporting those. And so that data will be very helpful. The other piece would be just a comment on Cape Canaveral. To me, while it's unfortunate, it's a good thing, because there's always a balance between true shovel-ready and running into issues like this, and the fact that they're being diligent and not putting bad money in the ground, but trying to move projects forward, I think is admirable, and I have no personal issue with that. I think that's
Well, and
it's a
we,
positive thing.
we
so.
rushed all of the cities with coming forward with these projects. And so, it's not terribly surprising that some of them, when you get down to business, don't quite work out. And they haven't staffed up to be able to address this. So I'm sure the cities are, doing their best to partner at this point.
Thank you for that explanation.
If we could, there's a concern in the back of my mind that we may find ourselves in the odd position of having money and nothing to sop it up as we move into the next fiscal year. This is year zero money that all of a sudden is going back in the coffers, and I think that the engagement, the workshop that's coming up in, I guess, October, the continual engagement with key players in the various governmental entities that spend this money is an essential part of what this trust fund operation does, and part of the obligation to us to ensure that the people who actually will put shovels in the ground and spend the money are at the table, lest the trust fund lose credibility because it's sitting in the bank. That's a key thing, I think.
Okay, on to the better news. The Myra project, septic to sewer project, actually had two project areas, one that was further along than the other. And so the first area on South Tropical Trail is actually completed now, and it included homes and businesses and apartments, so a lot of different types of land use. And so rather than giving you the number of units, I gave you the number of residential equivalent credits, 48. So that's done. And then for the Rockledge Breeze Swept project, they have well, as of the date that I wrote this staff report, they had connected 32 homes. So between those two projects, we have the equivalent of 80 homes off of septic onto sewer.
Virginia?
Yes.
Is that the delta since the report we received last month, or is that
No,
the
that's
total?
total.
Okay.
And I'm sorry to delay, but what are the credits versus units? The units are households, right?
Yes. But so commercial facilities
Okay.
have all sorts of different uses of water volume and produce different volumes of sewage.
Okay.
And so they base it on a typical home produces this many gallons a day, and this facility is producing 7 times that or whatever. And so
Thanks.
those are the equivalent units.
Question there was early on, and I think it came up when we were dealing with the St. Sebastian River and the waterfront septic sewer there, that the model that is in, I think it's in Lagoon plan, for dealing with non-residential hookups has wrong numbers in it. Has something been done to rectify that and to acknowledge that commercial hookups generally have much higher volumes? Also, there was an issue with Myra that failed to note that there's a difference between a condo slant apartment's water volume and that of a single-family dwelling. So there's a couple of model issues that are from the past. Have these been addressed, or are they hanging out there?
No, they have not been addressed. So the plan was based on Department of Health information on a septic system is here. And that was all the information we had for planning purposes. Once we get into these specific project areas, we find out more about what specifically is in the ground at those facilities.
Can staff work with applicants on a workshop basis or a direct liaison basis to make good faith estimates of better numbers where we're dealing with things that are not conforming to the model that this is based on?
And that's what we did. In the MICO, you'll recall that there was an initial submission that you all reviewed in January, and then we brought you a revised submission in February. And the difference between January and February was where we did that analysis. So we'll continue to do it on a project-by-project basis, but it's not practical to do it in the plan because we don't have the information.
What's the target number total of the Myra plan and also of the Rockledge plan? I mean, you got 48 gone with Myra. Do you know what the target is?
I can get you that number. I don't know it off the top of my head.
I was wondering how
The Rockledge number, the second phase is larger than the first phase, but I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Okay.
Rockledge, I think it's 141, 146. It's 140-something homes.
Okay.
MIMS dredging, Matt, you want to?
The project's been contracted, and we're working with the contractor to work on a few details and some of their pre-construction submittals, and we hope to have the project to breaking ground within 30 days, hopefully as soon as the end of the month, to issue notice to proceed. So that'll be, it'll take them a couple of months of upland preparation before they'll actually be in the water dredging, but we need to get them started on the upland work right away.
Okay. The 3 Brevard County septic to sewer projects that were in the original plan for starting next year, Sykes M, Sykes T, and Central C, those the rules regarding the use of consultants to design those projects, we can use continuing consultants that are already under contract with the county if the design work is under $200,000 and if the expected construction is under $2 million. These projects exceed those thresholds, so we've had to do specific RFPs for these projects. Those have been advertised. We have dozens of proposals. Utilities is reviewing those proposals now to select those design contractors. For MICO, that project is under the $2 million threshold, so we have a task order that is moving through the system to get that project designed and permitted. We submitted an EPA 319 grant application for the MICO project, and we're hopeful that we can also bring to you an extension of that project south to pick up those other homes that are directly on the waterfront immediately south of where the original project limits were proposed. Indian River Isles is not a lagoon-funded project, but I know Dr. Windsor brought up last meeting that there are these other dredging projects going on, and so I thought you would like to know that that muck removal project was completed on August 4th, removing about 2,000 cubic yards of muck. And then you have another handout on the table here. So last month, we talked about the Muck Finder phone app and that citizen science program. And you had dots of where data was collected. Now you have a map of how deep, how thick the muck was at those locations, where they collected that data. And they have since then collected additional data in Newfound Harbor that's not, the analysis and mapping isn't done yet, but this is really going well, and I think you can tell from this map how easy it is to tell where the thickest muck is, and our intent with, in the lagoon plan, there's funding allocated for dredging out in the lagoon. There's also funding allocated for dredging in some of the worst canals, but we need to know which are the worst canals. We also need to know which are the worst areas of muck out in the lagoon. We have the research team at Florida Tech already contracted, already working at going out and sampling and prioritizing the muck areas out in the lagoon. My plan is to work with the muck finders to collect this sort of thickness information in the canals, and then contract with the Florida Tech research team to verify the flux of muck from those canals so that we can prioritize those canals and get that work, that permitting underway.
So, since these are all volunteers, and this is really very cool, it's a little hard for me to read, but I got it. Could they maybe go in now that they just completed, I know it wasn't our project, but they just completed the Indian River Isles dredging. Could they go in and do the Muck Finders program there so that we get, I know we don't have a pre-measurement exact, but we could get a post-measurement to see if we're being successful? I mean, we know we got piles of stuff, but let's see that there's nothing there anymore.
Yeah, great suggestion.
That's not a muck removal
You
project.
might want to also
Maintenance dredging.
talk to Wayne Caragino about going up into the
Cocoa
Cocoa
Beach.
Beach nor the Venetian Isles. So,
Well, they,
it was done last
yeah,
year.
and they had two projects. They had one project that was navigation, then they had the other project that was muck.
Yeah, the muck is one that really counts. So
Yeah.
Those are small, narrow, fairly shallow canals.
Yeah.
We'll,
Maybe you have to coordinate with MRC or whoever's doing this, but
Yes.
it just seems like it'd be good to, we could demonstrate that the muck's gone or what's still there, which would be helpful for Matt when we do new projects.
If I could, just a quickie, nod your head yes or no. Wayne, do we have a pre-dredging and post-dredging muck depth number for, you do?
We
Perhaps it'd
do.
be useful if you sent us a note on that for next time.
and we do for all of the projects, it's just collected in a different way, so to do apples to apples.
Yeah.
John, actually, the payment is based on the difference between the pre-dredge and the post-dredge, so we have to do that.
Okay. we have finalized a scope with Florida Tech and the Ocean Research Conservation Association to look at contamination in the muck in the Newfound Harbor area that is going to be dredged fairly soon. And so we're looking at all sorts of things that are in the muck besides nitrogen and phosphorus and carbon and sulfur organics. Are there human health concerns? Are there other things in the muck that we, or say Roundup? Are there other chemical or biological things in that muck that we should be concerned with?
Is that to be representative of all the muck, or is it specific to the Newfound Harbor issue?
We had a very small, it's funded from some legislative funds. It was a very limited budget, and so we selected that area for a number of reasons. Depending on what we find, then we may want to look further afield.
Isn't that a requirement for all dredging, to look for heavy metals and toxins and liquid materials and so on?
Right, we do that toxicity, but we don't do, there isn't a requirement for biological toxicity for things like Vibrio or the byproducts of the many lawn chemicals that we use today.
Interesting.
So later on the agenda, we're going to have a new video produced by Dylan Hansen under contract with the city of Satellite Beach.
Okay.
And Vinny is going to present the homepage, the dashboard and scoreboard pages. So work underway this month. The only thing I wanted to highlight is that the Long Point Park septic upgrade is actually underway. They broke ground last week, and so we're looking forward to having that completed. Under meetings this month, we had a seagrass restoration tour with all of the speaker panel, plus some of their the speaker panel from last month, plus some of their co-workers out at the site on Merritt Island that Carter Henney talked about. And so that team is busily thinking about how they could take their own advice and your advice and bring something in this next round of substitution project request to pilot some seagrass restoration techniques. And yesterday, Lorraine and I were at the...
John?
Oh, and John, yes, sorry, the Marine Resources Council American Assembly on Communications, and we'll be racing back there after this meeting, so that's going well. And then I wanted to note upcoming volunteer opportunities, the Oyster Living Shoreline projects, the projects in Indian Atlantic were completed last weekend, but there are 3 dates coming up to work on a project on Geiger Point that's at the western end of the Melbourne Causeway, the 192 Causeway. There's 500 or 600 linear feet of project going on there, so there'll be volunteer opportunities, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, and then 2 weeks later and 2 weeks later. So
Is the county leading that, or is that?
it's led by the zoo.
Okay.
And so the link there is to the Restore Our Shores, which is a zoo program. You need to, if folks are interested, they need to log on in advance and fill out a liability release form in advance.
Okay. Related to that, the seagrass restoration tour for this month, is that something that's open, or?
That occurred.
Oh, okay. I see.
Really?
All right.
When is that?
So last month, we agreed that this month's topic would be septic to sewer, and next month's topic would be monitoring performance and measuring success. I'd like October, if we could go ahead and select the coordinating 10 years of dredging and spoil management, and try to combine that with what's listed as number 4, the groundwater pollution research plan. I think we'll be ready with that information in October. I'm trying to figure out how to fit as much of this in before the December and January selection process as possible, and then think about whether for 2018, how frequently do you want to meet? Because we'll want to come up with those dates and get them advertised. So, whether you want to continue meeting monthly or whether you want to drop back to quarterly or, so I'm not asking for an answer now, but maybe next meeting we can have that.
A quick question on number 2, coordinating 10 years of dredging. You note that it's going to be done by the Florida Inland Navigation District. There's a lot more players involved than just FIND. Are they going to be engaged, or are we going to hear from St. John's, or are we going to hear from the county, or are we going to hear from the cities? If FIND is coordinating itself, that's wonderful, but they're not the biggest dredgers around, and it's all the spoil that we got to figure out where it goes and how we handle it. So who's going to be engaged with that?
I need to figure that out, but at a minimum, I wanted to include FIND because they do have the largest available spoil management areas. And they have voiced to us multiple times that they are willing participants and, want to cooperate with us.
But they only go 6 feet down and charted navigable channels. And there's a heck of a lot more river and a lot more muck depth than just what FIND cares about. So I think we need everybody else there.
Right, like with Turkey Creek, we're using their site to handle the muck that we dredged.
All of it?
Yes, all of the muck that we dredged.
For
Well,
10
it's
years.
only temporary dewatering. We have to clear out the site so that it's ready for them to use again. With the MIMS project, we're using their MIMS dewatering site for our project.
I've been the advocate all along of trying to understand and see that it's coordinated. Where does all this muck go? There's what, 60% of the money we're spending is hauling stuff out of the river. And I think if the only people we're talking to are the people who figure it out for themselves, that doesn't handle all the folks I'm not sure have figured it out for themselves. The fundamental question is, when you look at the volume of muck that's going to come out over the next 10 years, do we have adequate sites for it now? What do we need to do to create or develop or license or whatever is necessary to develop sites if we don't? It's cubic yards versus cubic yards, and I think it needs a broader answer than we know what we're going to do next year. I mean, I'd be perfectly happy if Matt said, hey, we got it all 100% figured out, no problems, every cubic yard that comes out of the river has got a place to go, and it's okay, it's good to go right now, but I haven't heard that yet.
So it's a two-step process, right? The material needs to first go to
Understood.
a dewatering area.
Yes.
And we have those fine sites available. The
These
distance.
are adequate for the scope of dredging that we see.
The volume in those sites is adequate. The location of them is not always ideal. So while we could add multiple booster pumps and pump material all the way to wherever the nearest find site is, if we can find alternative sites that are closer, that would be less expensive. So we will, I think, over the next 10 years, continue to look for those less expensive opportunities, but we want to have a backup plan where we know we can do it this way. But then
We've also got
always-
our eyes open for reuse options, too. I mean, you're also researching that. I think you've mentioned before, looking for opportunities to reuse the material or...
Right, so that's sort of the second steps. After you've dried it out at that DMMA, then where does the dry material go? And that is a question that has not been answered. So far, the contractors have been working mostly with the agricultural industry on the ultimate destination of those materials.
So we'll keep asking the question until it does have an answer. And I'll also note that just the detailed spoils drying area, the initial pump site, is something that continues to need help. I know the city of Cocoa Beach is negotiating with the school system to find to see if they can use a previously unused spoils dump site to dry that out. And these details as we work our way through project, all need good answers. And just knowing that there's somewhere in Brevard County where it could end up, maybe if we had long enough hoses and big enough pumps, is not quite the same as saying there is an effort to coordinate dredging spoil disposal, phase 1, phase 2, across all the entities that do dredging, whether it's trust fund money or St. John's or fine or state money or federal money. I think right now it is a less coordinated area than we should be comfortable with.
I just would like to add also that we have been working on looking at those final use alternatives. We've been working with the IFAS, with the Extension Service, and looking with their agricultural people to try to determine what the acceptable pHs would be, what changes will take place in the soil once we put it out on farmland, because that's a concern that someone would have for their pasture land. When you give me 100,000 cubic yards, what's the pH going to be in 3 years when this is dry, and what am I going to need to add to this? So we're working with, try to determine how it'll be successful if it is put out on like pasture land, for example. And also we're looking to commercial entities to try to get those ideas brought to us, so something new may come up so they could find out what to do with it.
Well, I would comment, we've got outstanding management and leadership in this area of dredging and muck removal. Everyone we talk to, everyone we deal with is just super. But I wonder if we might not be a good thing if the folks involved formed a task force to deal with these issues. What do we do with this? And then come back to us with an integrated, coordinated answer, because we're pointing our finger at guys like Wayne and so on and so on. And really, this is something that I think we need a collective effort, and it's more than the scope of just the trust fund.
John, do you still have a question?
No, thank
Okay.
you. Matt answered. Actually, I do have one other. The seagrass restoration tour, which I guess I missed because I really wanted to go on that. That's just north of the airport. Who attended that from county? One of your staff, Virginia?
I was there. Is anybody? Jane was there.
Okay. And at a later date, maybe by email or something, can you just share what you observed and the results, or unless it's easy to do now?
The seagrass where they planted was very patchy, as was the seagrass outside of where they planted was also very patchy. The biggest difference was that where there were patches of seagrass, it was much thicker. The density was much higher where they had done their restoration. And one of the things that they're doing with their restoration is they didn't just plant them and go away. They come back regularly, and they are injecting root growth hormone into the sediments there. And so we're looking at, what is the, trying to quantify that benefit. And Harbor Branch is getting some of that mix of root growth hormone and is going to be experimenting with that in some of their seagrass transplanting projects as well. So hopefully we can try to figure out what that benefit is.
Thank
We
you.
had also talked about the field house property and the research that's going on there, and maybe having a field trip at some time, or a Christmas party there or something.
Is that something you want me to try to organize?
Yeah, it would be something to consider. I'm not sure what the opportunities are for us. They certainly would welcome us visiting. That is the project that the University of Central Florida is involved in. I was over there, and the property itself, of course, is immensely interesting from an historic perspective, but, the science that's taking place there might be of interest to the group as well. And of course, it's open to the public for folks, in the audience that might be interested.
Okay, and the last thing on the staff report is the schedule for the Year 2 substitute project. So at the last meeting, you asked us to try to move up that submittal deadline for stormwater projects from December 18th to an earlier date. When I went to email the city managers that change, I checked my last correspondence with them, and it included this December 18th date, so I thought it best not to confuse things by changing the date on them. So we will live with what we initially sent out, and
Merry Christmas.
yes, yes. In future years, we may decide to give ourselves more time for that.
Should that be year one substitute, right? Because we're doing year zero?
We've,
Year 2.
it's year 2, because in the first round, you did year 0 and year 1
Oh, that's
together.
right, that's right.
All right, the financial statement, you'll see that the revenues are already above $17 million. And in the bottom half of the sheet, in the expenditures section, you see that the only thing that's registered on the county's books as spent are the Myra projects, and that's where we've paid those connection fees. Obviously, we have, per Courtney's sheet here, we have a lot of other work in contract. It's just the bills haven't hit yet. So I want to come up with a process that shows you what we have committed. And so hopefully for the next meeting, we'll have that solved for you. But this is what the county's finance system spits out. And I don't think that's
obligated?
adequate.
Don't they track obligated?
They do track obligated if it's to a vendor with a purchase order. They don't track obligated when it's a transfer to a city, an intergovernmental transfer. And so we've got to work with the finance people and the auditors to come up with how to do that.
This seems reasonably easy to read. I mean, I've got a budget line, that's how much is assigned for the project, and then I've got, an expense line, which is how much we've paid toward it. Am I missing something? This seems fairly simple.
I think this is pretty normal. It takes a while. I mean, we've said we're going to do this, but it just takes a while for things to work through government processes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you don't want any more information, I'm happy to not create work, but
I think in an ideal world, I would want the additional information. The question is how much effort is, it boils down to, it's a method for you to know how we're truly progressing. It's kind of that whole progress discussion we had, because that's really what it is. And so I know for me, it's kind of some feedback from you. If you can get it done reasonably, I think it's worth looking into. But you're tracking these projects. We've got a finite commitment to them. You're monitoring progress. From a practical standpoint, if that starts to become too much of a burden, I would ask that you let us know.
thank you. That's my report.
Okay. Okay, so we move to the educational part of our program. Well, all of it's educational. But, so are we going to follow the same format, Virginia, that we have followed of 5 or 10 minute presentation and then the panel discussion?
10 to 15-minute presentations,
Okay.
5-minute break, panel discussion.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So then we will proceed with Robert Bolton, who will be our first presenter. City of Vero project.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. My name is Robert Bolton. I go by Rob. Give you a little background. I was originally born in New Jersey, grew up along the shore where Sandy kind of cruised through there a couple of years ago, and I was born into a family that had a septic tank business. So I grew up and worked in the septic tank business till I was 18, and then came to school down here in Florida to UCF, where I met my wife, and I graduated, came to beautiful Brevard County, where we built our home, and I worked for Palm Bay for about 9 years, and in the utility business there, and then went down to Vero in 2000 and Have been there since, and about 10 years ago, I became the director, and here we are talking about septic systems again, all over again. So I've come full circle. Hopefully the information I give you here today can help with your communities and my community, since I still live here, and it has helped Vero Beach quite a bit. So my topic today is hybrid step systems. So what is a hybrid step system? Hybrid step system is actually a low-impact wastewater collection system. It uses the septic tank that's normally on the person's property to still collect solids, and then it has a pump or chamber installation with a pump in it to pump the effluent to a wastewater plant. And in some cases where the drain field is still active and still works, it allows that drain field to be left in place as a backup for hurricanes, power outages, and those types of events. So the difference between, say, gravity sewer and a step system is about half the price, actually less than half the price of a gravity sewer system. The availability cost of a hybrid step system is about 1/10 the cost. So when I talk about availability costs, I mean, what is the cost of a local community or a provider to run a line out from wherever they have lines to that resident and allow them to connect up to the system? Because that's the ultimate goal, is to get out as fast as we can, get to the properties so they no longer have to rely on a septic system. The collection lines for a hybrid step system are very small, 2 inches to 4 inches, so they can be directionally drilled into the ground instead of having to open cut roads, open cut streets. You have less impact on the residents, faster delivery time. And like I said, it's about 1/8, actually less than 1/8 the time involved to get a step system out to the neighborhoods versus gravity sewer. So what are we trying to accomplish? Everybody here knows we're trying to stop nutrients from going into the ground. We want to affordably connect people to a sewer system. And also we want to maintain growth in our communities. We don't want the state to come in and do some type of moratorium on septic systems. So how can a step system accomplish this? Nutrients no longer enter into the water table through the drain field, but instead are pumped to a wastewater treatment plant. Step system cost is comparable to a drain field replacement. So the residents, what you're trying to do is break the septic tank cycle, where somebody puts in a septic system, then X amount of years later the drain field goes bad, they got to replace the drain field, X amount of years later the drain field goes bad, they got to replace it. So what you're trying to do is break that cycle. Step system is the only sewer system that can be installed during new construction, pre-plumbed in to a septic system, so you later on just come in and put a pump in and pump it to the sewer system. Here's a collection system versus step system comparison. So on the bottom you got a conventional gravity sewer, which is a bunch of lines, manholes, lift stations, large road construction. On the top is an effluent sewer system where it just follows the contour of the ground. Also, the waste strength for the step system is less loading on a wastewater treatment plant. Here's past experience with gravity sewer. This was a project that we did after the 2004 hurricanes. You can see the heavy construction that takes place, disruption. This was a 1-lane road going in, so we had to maintain traffic to allow all the residents to get to their homes. The cost we hooked about 60 homes up. Range was from $8,600 roughly to $21,000 or $22,000. In 2007, we got a $1.5 million grant from the state. There was a contingency on it. We had to have 60% of the people voluntarily say that they wanted to get off their septic system and onto sewer. We did a poll of the neighborhoods and everything else on the barrier island. 14% of the residents supported gravity sewer because of the cost. Because they didn't like the cost, they didn't like the disruption, they didn't like the effect it might have on their trees, their landscaping, their way of life. So here's more past experience. So you got the social costs, you got disruption to vehicle traffic, road and pavement damage, potential damage to existing utilities, heavy construction and air pollution, risk of pedestrian safety, higher tendency for citizen complaints, increased environmental impacts, and emergency access concerns. In addition to that, you have, most of the time gravity sewer involves dewatering the ground. So now if you have septic tanks that are in the front yard, you're dewatering that water and pumping it out into the lagoon. Construction step means usually it's 2 to 4 inches, follows the contour of the ground, no lift stations, no manholes, largely immune to I&I and leakage because if you use HDPE, it's all welded seamless pipe. No major disturbances of established vegetation, traffic flow. If you look, they're just small directional drilling rig comes in and bores out roughly 500 feet, pulls the line back. So if you look at this picture, here's the line coming up out of the ground, all the way down past that stop sign is where it came up, and you're boring underneath as an oak tree. Here's a typical main to a property. It's just similar, very, very similar to a water main or water installation. So what did Vero Beach do? We prioritized the areas into basins and looked at, we used the Volusia model that was available. Now there's all kinds of models for prioritizing basins out there. We funded the installation of 2-inch main by taking $1 million and throwing it at it. We just said, look, we want to get out there as fast as we can. Took $1 million, appropriated it towards this project, and got to work starting to put in 2-inch lines. Created an incentive program for people to connect up. So we normally charge an impact fee. It's illegal for me to waive an impact fee. However, I can establish a credit that's equal to that impact fee and give somebody a credit for the septic system that they're going to have on their property that they're going to retire. We also established, that was roughly $2,290. We also established a cash credit. So it cost us roughly $1,100 to put the mains out in front of the property. And the city council voted that we would waive, if you came in and bought your equipment and paid cash, we wouldn't charge you for the lines. All we're asking the residents to do was pay for the equipment on the property and have somebody install it. Provide a mechanism for people to finance. Implemented a mandatory pump out and inspection program. So you had the carrot out here of the incentive program that we had, and then you had the stick where after 5 years of the program being in place, it's mandatory that that person has their system pumped out, inspected to make sure that it's properly operating, the ones that did not connect. If it's not functioning, then they're required to hook to the step system. Step system is not mandatory. However, once the lines are in front of that property, it's mandatory by the state that they no longer can repair their septic system. They must connect to the step system. Applied for incentives from St. John's. We received about $300,000. We got to work installing mains in March of 2015, and we finished in front of all the residential homes in May of 2017. So we put over 80,000 feet of line in the ground. We recently received another grant from St. John's, which will allow an additional $500 credit for the first 328 people to sign up. So we roughly put in lines for 1,400 properties. 106 people had failures during that time and wanted us to connect up, which kind of slowed us down, but we were able to get lines to their property so they could connect. Out of the 1,500 homes in the 2-year period, we only had 3 people that weren't willing to wait. So you only had 3 repairs that were done. 106 of them were in failure, connected up. This month, we will mail out advising homeowners now that they have 1 year for that incentive program. So after 1 year, the incentive program goes away. So we wanted to create an incentive program that was there for people to take action. Here's how the original step system that I was talking about, that we came up with design, left the existing drain field in place. So all that occurs is you got a cartoon here of a house, a septic system, and a drain field. We put a little pump chamber in between the septic tank and the drain field, and we pump out to the 2-inch line that's in the road. And from there, it goes to the wastewater plant. If they have a failing drain field, or they don't want their drain field because they want to have a pool there, or they have an addition on the house that they want to put in, then they can go ahead and put in a 500-gallon pump chamber, which gives easily a day's storage during normal operation if a pump was to fail. If you're in a hurricane mode, you're camping. You're hurricane camping. You're not using a lot of water, so therefore you have about 3 days worth of storage before it has to be pumped out. We install I'll get to that a little later. So here's the installation of 1A, simple little basin. And there it is after it's installed. There's the installation of a 1B, tying into an existing tank. So there's the existing septic tank, and here's the new pump chamber right next to it. And there it is. You see two little lids in the grass. If the septic tank is failing, Brevard County probably has better built septic tanks than Indian River County. The septic tanks in Indian River County were very poorly constructed over the years. Brevard County has very decent septic systems. But if the septic tank is failing, then they'll install a brand new septic tank and a pump basin. For a 3-bedroom house, it's 1,000 gallons. For a 5-bedroom house, it's 1,500 gallons. So here's the construction of a whole new system. They're only 5 foot wide, so if you look at those shrubs right there, from the house to the shrubs was 15 feet. That's the new tank going in. That's the pump chamber after it. And that's it after they resodded the property. That's the pump chamber. So this, what's different, a lot of times you'll hear the word grinder. This is not a grinder system. This is a step system. So the effluent is filtered, and there's a pump that's installed, and the pump is like having a well pump instead of having a macerator pump. There's your panel that gets installed on your side of your house. Green light means that the power is on to the panel. Green light on the top means the pump is running, and the red button on the bottom means if there's something wrong, there's going to be an alarm. You push it, and you call the number right there on the front panel. We maintain everything. Everything that's installed is maintained by the City of Vero Beach. The homeowner does not maintain anything after that. So the benefits of step system, you get primary treatment on the lot. You get 85 to 95% removal of the fog. It stays in the tank. Tanks provide at least 24 hours emergency storage, 72 hours during a hurricane event. You have about an 8-year pump out cycle that is what we're expecting. Some homes, depending on how many people are living there, may be 15 years before they have to be pumped out. Any abuses stay in the tank, and it keeps the untreated septic tank effluent from getting into the groundwater and into the nearby lagoon. These are your costs. So the 1B is common, and the 3A is a common one. We have a lot of old homes. One thing we didn't realize was how old the homes were in Vero Beach and how old the septic systems were and how much people just replaced drain fields and didn't replace tanks. So we have tanks dating back to the 1953 that are still in the ground that are just a mess. Some don't have bottoms in them. Some, it's just horrible. So a 1B fully installed is roughly $6,300 is what it costs the homeowner on their property. A 3A for everything brand new is $8,100 cost for the property owner. You add back in the incentives after a 1-year period, then those prices will go up to those two numbers. Therefore, that's why you have a lot of people wanting to hook up. This is our typical example of how it works. So you would normally get charged those costs. Here's the equipment charge, and here's your credits on the bottom. So at the end of the day, all you're paying is for the equipment. We purchase the equipment. We directly purchase from the vendors, and we have a warehouse, so we have it available. A homeowner makes application to us. They go down and they pay for it, and the contractor shows up at our warehouse to pick up all the equipment. We use certified installers. They're septic tank installers. So we have a certification every year. New people can come in and go through the whole certification process. We get a 5-year warranty on all of our parts and equipment from the vendors. Actually, the pumps now have, for an additional $25, I get a 10-year warranty that they'll just full replacement if something happens to it. So afterwards, the operation and maintenance of it, as we move forward, we haven't had to really do any preventative maintenance on them, but we will start that next year. It's simply hosing off a filter and checking the sludge in the septic tank and checking the panel for any loose connections. Like I said before, that's your typical 95% level of confidence for pump outs with step systems. So so somebody, say there's 2 people living on a house that's a 1,000-gallon tank, you could go 15 to 18 years before you have to ever pump it out. This is the pump, picture of the pump. It's a half horsepower, 115 volt. has an expected life cycle of 20 to 25 years. We have a 5-year warranty, and there's a 10-year warranty, optional warranty that we're now buying. Yelm, Washington installed 1,700 of them in 1994, and they only had 28 failures as of today. If you're interested, we have a STEP app. You can go in, you can get right now, you can go on your iPhone or anything and put in STEP system, and you'll be able to download our app that has all the information about our program. We have an interactive map for the residents so they can go out and see where the mains are available. It also shows who has connected so they can see it lights up green. It's kind of a salmon color if somebody hasn't connected, and then it lights up green that they have connected. So they can track through the neighborhoods and see who's actually connecting up. You don't need that? And the presentation, somebody changed it on me. That was supposed to be afterwards. With that, the only other thing I'd like to say is that I'm kind of, as a Brevard County resident, proud of the group, proud of what Virginia has accomplished with the being able to get the funding for this, and I'm glad that you have a good group of people and you're moving forward with something. Thank you.
And do we have any quick questions before we move on?
I have a question for Virginia. In both the plan and possibly the substitute projects, we will see septic thingies coming forward to us. It strikes me that some of them, a step system would be useful. And so I would hope that when they're brought to us for review, that there be a couple of check boxes. Checkbox 1, step system applicable, and step box 2, step system baked into the application. Does that make sense?
I think I lost you on the last sentence.
Well,
So on each
if it is applicable, and it won't be on all of them, I don't think, because of pipe runs and so on, but if it is this something that the applicant is asking for? Perhaps we want to say we'd like to require it be part of it and fund it and so on.
Be part of their review
Yeah.
or consideration, that they consider this option before bringing us something different?
4 years from now, the folks that are sitting around this table are going to see a project where this ought to be a consideration. I'd like to have the process make that something that's a checklist rather than something that the folks here need to know about and remember.
I guess I have some concern about that, because this is, I think this is a great option,
Yep.
but it's exactly that, it's an option. There's many different ways to go about these systems, and given the utility, they may or may not, this may not be the right option for
That's right,
them.
that's right.
And so I guess I would have some concerns about overemphasizing a specific option. My preferred course, but I agree with you as far as visibility of the things that are out there, and so my personal preferred approach would be to make sure that we've got a repository of information that shows the varied options that are out there, some of the case studies and history, so that any of those people that are applying, that they've had good exposure to the different things that are out there, so that hopefully they have a higher degree, the potential for a higher degree of success, but it really leaving it up to them on what they think is right for themselves as a utility to operate, because there's different, like with my utility, we'd be hard pressed to go with some of this approach. But
I think we're in violent agreement. I would put the first sorting obligation on county staff to say, binary, is this something that's useful to think about here or not? And I think they've got the judgment factors to make that. I wouldn't expect to see a step question, a step system question come to us if it wasn't a smart thing to do, and you can make that judgment.
I did have one question for Robert.
Yeah.
If you had to alter or increase your resources, because it seems like instead of concentrating at the wastewater treatment plant to do any maintenance and repairs, now you have to maybe disperse people out in the community to do some of that maintenance?
No, I actually did an evaluation of what it cost me to provide service to a single customer, because I had the same concern. I did not want to have different rates. I didn't want to have different costs. I want to make sure they were similar. So I did an evaluation of a full repair. What does it cost me to maintain a gravity sewer system with lift stations, the staff, the equipment, and also the replacement value? And I did the same with the step system, and I came out to within One was like, I think the gravity sewer system comes out to like $12.99 per month. The 1B system comes out to be actually less than that, and the 3A system comes out to be by about $1, and the other comes out to be $1 on the other side. So when you average the two together, they're the similar cost. From a employee standpoint, yes, we wanted to make sure. I did some research. If you look at grinder systems, you have roughly 1 employee per 200 homes. I have right now 1 employee for roughly 1,200 connections on a gravity sewer system. And I'm finding that you have about 1 employee for roughly 1,000 to 1,400 on a step system. So the employee base is the same also.
Thank you.
I have one quick one. Do you have an estimate on when, based upon failure rates and things like that, when you'll actually achieve the 1,500?
The 1,500 is going to be a function of failure rates and a function of the incentive and a function. Right now, like Stewart, for example, they're putting grinder systems in. They're seeing a 51% connection without mandatory connection. Theirs isn't even mandatory that somebody can still replace their septic system if they're not required to hook up to the grinder at all. Ours is, if you have a failure, we're falling back on the state requirements and you're going to connect. So you're going to have somewhere around a 50% probably up front. What you're going to run into is the people that just replaced their septic system are going to wait 10 years because they don't want to take on those additional costs that they have. They're really going to be mad if you come in with a mandatory program and tell them they're going to pay something, $25,000 for a gravity sewer system, and they don't have anything. But it is more or less a failure. So, the life expectancy of a septic system is 25, 30 years. So it took us a long time to get here. It may take 25 years to get out.
I guess that, for me, that's the thing. A big part of the committee's thoughts and discussions around septic conversions is it's absolutely the right way to go. It's very important. It's impactful. We need to make sure we understand what the timing of the impacts are, because this is a long-term investment.
Yeah. The politics of it, you saw the numbers there, 14% people in favor of it. It's not a proactive thing for people. So. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Lorraine, can I?
Yes.
So
One
Virginia,
more.
in the plan, on the number of septic systems in Brevard within 55 yards of the water is just over 15,000. And those are where we're focusing our initial efforts. And we've got a budget there of about $20,000 per household. This step, which is an option, looks lower cost. But does that $20,000 also include the county's lines into the roadways into neighborhoods that don't currently have, like we were talking about Milford last week? So am I apples and oranging these dollars, I guess is my question?
I think so. One of the other considerations is capacity at the plants. So what the $20,000 does not include is, if the plant is already at capacity or hits capacity with one small, extra neighborhood added, then what?
Yeah, and
So we're not building new plants and we're not expanding existing.
right. So part of my concern is that building and zoning, et cetera, I'm familiar with a home that was just built literally on the water, and they had to put a septic tank in, which seems backwards for everything we're trying to accomplish. So we're working here, but the rest of county building and zoning, et cetera, needs to work on the same kind of direction.
And I think the next two presentations will follow up on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, okay, so it's Dr. Gao.
Thank you. I'm Xuequing Gao. I'm with Florida Department of Health Onsite Sewage Program. Thank you for inviting us to share some of the information of the onsite system. As Ms. Bolton said, STEP is a very good system, but we also have some other options that we want to share with everybody. The title of the presentation is Available Onsite Sewage Treatment and Disposal System. We call them OSTDS. People like to call them, septic tank, but it's not just a septic tank. It also includes a drain field. So we call them, OSTDS. And specifically about the available technology in Florida that removes nitrogen. So why only about nitrogen? What about phosphorus? In Florida, we have about somewhere between 2.1 to 2.7 million parcels, built parcels, that actually relies on the OSTDS for domestic wastewater treatment, which account for about 1/3 of the total 8 million built parcels across the entire state. Most of these systems is what we call conventional OSTDS system, which primarily include a septic tank and a drain field. If they are installed and maintained properly, they can remove most of the critical pollutant in the domestic wastewater, including BOD, organic carbon, suspended solid, total phosphorus, and even bacteria, at a rate, in many cases, more than 90%. So they can do a pretty good job in removing most of the critical pollutant, but they're not designed to remove nitrogen. Basically, it's because nitrogen has a very low soil binding capacity, especially for Florida. Sandy soil has a very low binding capacity with the nitrogen. Depending on the nitrogen removal capability of these technology, we can group them roughly into 3 different groups. Most of the conventional septic tank remove only 30% of the nitrogen from domestic wastewater, which is, in many cases, insufficient to prevent nitrogen getting into the groundwater and then getting back into the surface water. We have, a set of technology we call the aerobic treatment unit that can actually provide a nitrogen treatment rate somewhere around 70%. And latest, we also tested, some in-ground nitrogen removal technology that provides the removal rate at this range. Of course, we also have systems that are specifically designed to remove nitrogen, which can provide nitrogen removal rate more than 90%. And how they're available in the state. Based on the availability of these technologies, we can also group them into 3 different groups. And the first group is the system that are currently being approved to be used in the state. And they actually include the conventional system, some of ATUs, and some of the system that's specifically designed to remove a certain pollutant to a certain level. And this kind of system, we call them performance-based treatment system, or PBTS. And we have, some of the systems that have already been approved in the state to be used. And we also have some systems that are currently being used in the state, but under a certain condition we call innovative system testing. These are the kind of systems that have been probably used in the other part of the country, but hasn't been, fully tested in the state of Florida. In order for them to be approved, to be implemented in large scale in the state, they need to go through this, innovative system testing to show that they can actually work. So we have systems like that. And we also have what we call the passive system, or 2-stage medium nitrogen removal system, that we are currently revising our septic tank rule to accommodate them. And this also includes 2 different designs. One is in the ground, the other one is in the tank. So I will go through them one by one. Regardless of what type of technology available, the basic mechanism for removing nitrogen pretty much follow the same path. You have the domestic wastewater getting into the septic tank. The dominating form of the nitrogen is organic nitrogen. And in the tank, there is some pre-treatment processes, and a processes we call ammonification turn organic nitrogen into ammonium. That's smelly material. So the dominating form of nitrogen in the effluent from the septic tank is ammonium. Ammonium is not very stable. When it is being exposed to the air, it can be quickly oxidized and being turned into nitrate. This typically happens in the conventional system under the drain field in the soil, unsaturated soil. Unfortunately, nitrate has very low capability to bind to soil. So if you do not treat it furthermore, it can penetrate the soil without being removed by a significant portion, get into the groundwater, pollute the groundwater. So, but if you put the nitrate into a right environment, By right environment, what I'm talking about is providing abundant supply of organic carbon and also low dissolved oxygen condition. A group of bacteria called denitrifier is going to do their trick to turn the nitrate into nitrogen gas and remove the nitrogen from the wastewater. So any technology that has higher nitrogen removal rate typically has relatively high nitrification rate and also high denitrification rate. So, oops. First, let's talk about those technologies that are currently approved in the state. And this is a typical design of the conventional system. Like I mentioned, it primarily includes the septic tank and the drain field. Wastewater getting into the tank, organic nitrogen turning into ammonium, ammonium discharged into drain field, being oxidized to nitrate. No further treatment in the soil, only remove somewhere around 30% of the nitrogen from the wastewater. Not enough in many cases. Aerobic treatment unit. This is the kind of design that you can see between the septic tank and drain field. They actually put in an aeration component in there. The purpose of that is to introduce air into the treatment train to facilitating the oxidation of organic carbon and also the facilitating the sedimentation of a total suspended solid. And typically, if this kind of system gets a certificate from National Sanitation Foundation, which is a third-party organization that Roxanne will talk about later on in some details, if that kind of system passes the NSF 40 standard, which means the BOD concentration and the total suspended concentration in the effluent reach the 25 milligram per liter and 30 milligram per liter standard, they will get a certificate from NSF, and we can approve them as a BTU to be used in the state. But you can see no nitrogen is involved in here. And these systems are not designed specifically to remove nitrogen, but they do have some capability to remove nitrogen. The aeration tank typically has somewhere around 30% of nitrogen removal capability, plus the 30% in the drain field. This type of system sometimes can help remove about 50% of the nitrogen from the wastewater. Of course, some of the ATU system has the capability to recycle that nitrified wastewater back to the septic tank. Septic tank typically has a higher organic carbon content and also low dissolved oxygen, which is a fairly ideal environment for the denitrifier bacteria to actually play their role. So that denitrification can actually happen through this recycle processes. This type of system typically removes the nitrogen at a rate somewhere around 70%. So we have that. And in many cases, this type of system may receive a NSF 245 certificate from NSF, which not only require the system to actually meet the NSF 40 requirement, but also require 50% of nitrogen being removed. So this type of system typically can provide somewhere between 65 to 70% of nitrogen. Of course, we always have this system that's specifically designed to remove nitrogen. They can put some component downstream of the aeration tank, add organic carbon into the tank, and create a low oxygen environment to facilitate the denitrification. And some of our performance-based system actually belong to this category. It can remove sometimes more than 90% of the nitrogen. And these are basically the available technology currently approved to be used in the state. So we have a list of the product being approved on the DOH website. I actually bring a table today, but if somebody interested, I can certainly share that table with everybody. How they are permitted. For conventional system, the only thing you need is a construction permit in order to install the system. They do not need operating permit, and they do not need the routine maintenance requirement. But the other system, like ATU and the performance-based system, will need operating permit. And these operating permit needs to be renewed every 2 years. And the performance, and also they need, basic routine monitoring, not monitoring, inspection from a third-party maintenance entity and also county health department. And we also have a subgroup of the performance-based system we call innovative system. Like I said, we have a set of systems that can be used in the state, but they're still under the testing condition. Basically, they've been used in other parts of the country, but we need to test them in the state to show that they can actually work. So this is the kind of system that I talked to Virginia before the meeting, that POTS probably is one example. They get the innovative system testing permit from DOH, and they want to install some system in the state, and the local can actually work with them to install this kind of a system as their piloting system.
So we have 3 of those ongoing right now.
Okay. So finally, the what we call the two-stage medium system or passive system. This kind of system, they typically have less than one pump, no more than one pump, just sometimes overcome the gravity and provide equal distribution of the wastewater across the drain field. And also, they typically have a 2-stage of medium associated with them. The stage 1 medium is, basically sand, provide lots of, spool air space to facilitate nitrification. And the second stage is the woody stage, meaning wood chips, provide organic carbon, and also provide the low oxygen condition. And there are actually 2 different kinds of design of this kind of system. One is in-tank system. We call it in-tank system. This is the septic tank, and this is the drain field. In between these 2 components, you add 2-stage medium in tanks, not in drain field. And stage 1 is the sand facilitating nitrification. Stage 2, wood chips, sometimes even element sulfur to facilitate the denitrification. Another design is what we call the in-ground system. The in-ground system, these stage 2 medium will not be included in a tank. Instead, they stack up underneath the drain field. So the sandy stage will stay on top, and the woody stage, it will stay at the bottom. So the wastewater going through the infiltration service first get into the stage 1 being nitrified, and then nitrified water get into the stage 2 medium and being denitrified. In order to create a low oxygen environment, they actually put an impervious liner beneath the woody stage to hold the water. And the treated water will go over this rim and getting into the surrounding soil. That way, they actually provide the treatment. Unfortunately, our current rule does not allow us to actually put organic layer and the impervious layer under the drain field. So we have to revise our rule, septic tank rule, to actually accommodate this design. The revised rule is actually setting the design criteria for this kind of system, and also setting up a standard, the model, and several variants for this kind of design, and also require 5 to 10 of each of the design to be included in a pilot study before they can be allowed to implement in a large scale. And also, it requires detailed monitoring schedule for these testing systems. And the revised rule also defines detailed training requirement for the septic tank installers and the county health department entities to actually help install this kind of system. So permitting category for in-ground system, we tend to classify them as similar to the conventional system. No operating permit will be needed, but in-tank system will need to be classified as performance-based. In other words, they may need the operating permit and also the inspection. And well, also, the rule has been revision has been approved by our advisory committee in March and confirmed in April. And we are currently working very diligently to actually put the rule adoption related document together so that they can be adopted as rule. And at the same time, the department staff is working very diligently to setting up the performance criteria for the in-tank system. The rule revision is only related to the in-ground system. The in-tank system does not need a rule revision, but it does need a performance criteria. That's what we are currently working to. And the revised rule also includes another item here, recognizing the NSF 245 certificate. As I mentioned previously, that lots of ATU is actually certified by NSF as NSF 40. And NSF 245 is not currently recognized in the state. In order for this system to be used for nitrogen removal, we're revising our rule to include this in our rule so that those nitrogen removal capability can be recognized. So this is basically what I have. Basically what I covered is what are currently available to approved to be used in the state, what are currently being tested, and what are currently needs to revise the rule or develop the performance criteria in order for those systems to be used. And this is just an outline, and Roxanne is going to provide some details about what system is providing this kind of a treatment level.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any clarification questions?
What regulatory body do you need to get approval from to get 245 approved and your other?
We have a rule called the 64E6, and revise of that rule needs to be approved by our technical advisory committee, TRAP, or we call it that Technical Review and Advisory Panel, or TRAP. As long as they approve that, they will go through the regular rule adoption processes.
Okay, Danielle.
This is not my expertise by any means, but where does the nitrogen gas go?
Air.
Goes into the air?
Right.
Okay.
That's not a pollution of the air because 75% of the air is nitrogen gas anyway.
Okay.
And as long as it's not ammonium into the air, it's not nitrate into the air, we're not causing air pollution. Yes, please.
Do these or any of the systems we're speaking of make more sense where we're not 2 feet above sea level?
That's exactly the question I had. I want to ask, what is the water table separation in this general area?
I mean, a lot of these areas that we're looking at, the septic tanks were put in. The problem is, doesn't even need rain. They're below sea level. So I don't see how it works.
For the
in-tank might theoretically work.
Right. In-ground system, there's a rule requirement that underneath that liner, there should be 6 inches of separation, between the bottom of the liner and the seasonal high water table. Of course, you can always build a field system or mount system to elevate the system. But in order to do that, you probably will need a large footprint. So this technology may not be totally available for small lots.
It also may be more applicable, say, west of 95 than east of A1A or US 1.
Unless you're on a ridge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the issue with the drain field, product.
Okay, last 2 questions, and then we'll move on. Charlie?
Yeah, so in the in-ground passive system, you had stage 1 and stage 2 with the sand and the wood chips.
Right.
Do those have to be recharged? And if so, how often would they have to be recharged? I'm sure it's a loading question.
That's a very good question. Currently in the state, we have installed about 1 in-ground system. We have several more in-tank system. But there's some chemical calculations showing that the composition of those wood chips typically can easily go about 30 years, sometimes even more than 100 years. There are also data collecting from other parts of the country that actually showing that is the case. So, but we are currently doing a continued monitoring on several systems that I installed previously, testing system, just trying to get the long-term performance of this kind of system to answer this type of question, to see how long they're going to last and whether we need to replace them.
David?
2-part question.
Okay.
You had mentioned the footprint. What are the spatial needs of these multi-stage systems, and are all the components for them commercially available? You had mentioned you've done 1 in the state of Florida.
Right. I mean, all these, the component, basically, you're talking about sand, expanded clay, and the wood chips. They're certainly, available, in the market.
Well, you've got recycling of the aeration chambers. That's all standard material, all standard piping, standard tanks. Everything else about the systems are normal in the industry.
Normal.
Okay.
Nothing
And then
special.
Speak a little bit to the footprint that's necessary.
The footprint, the drain field size, can be determined. It's no difference, between the drain field of in-ground system and the other conventional system. It's just in order to, to make sure that the drain field water actually gets into the woody liner. The woody liner needs to be larger than the drain field per se. So the rule requires that maybe 2 feet beyond the range.
Larger than a conventional
Exactly.
single-stage septic,
Right.
traditional septic system.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Roxanne is next. Roxanne Groover.
Good morning. My name is Roxanne Groover. I am the Executive Director of the Florida Onsite Wastewater Association. I'm an engineer by training, although I don't carry my Florida PE here in the state. My graduate work is actually on nitrogen reduction using media filters. So even though we've only had one in the state that we've tested, they've been around in excess for 20 years. In fact, I remember my graduate advisor saying, why are we having this discussion with on-site systems? Nitrogen will never be an issue as we talk. So had we had this discussion and they had paid attention to me 20 years ago, we might be further than we are today. But with that being said, I've been asked to sort of talk to you guys about some of the technologies that are out there and sort of give you just a little more detail. But I'll be honest with you, it's going to be a fast and furious ride because there's lots of them out there. As Dr. Gao mentioned, everybody tends to say septic tanks, and the first challenge you have with that is it's much more than a tank. We actually have a drain field. The second challenge you have is anytime you use the word septic, people curl their nose and they think second-class citizens. And when we think about what a septic tank was originally designed to do, it's done a wonderful job. It took care of the bacterial problems we have. We don't see fecals in drinking waters as long as they're properly sited and designed. Where we now have a challenge is making sure that we're taking care of the nitrogen. And so, as I said, the industry has been looking at this for over 20 years. Knowing that nitrogen into groundwater is not a good thing, and we do. We have a lot of history and a lot of technology that's been proven to take care of nitrogen. So that is our OSTDS, so on-site sewage treatment and disposal system. And what we need to make sure we do is we understand what we're looking at, why we're looking at it, and what level of treatment we need. Because the one thing that we do with OSTDSs is we do use a soil component. And so based on that availability of the soil component, what type of soil component we have, you might not need a level as high of a treatment at an end pipe, so at the end of that technology as you release into the soil, because your soils might be able to do other things. So Dr. Gao sort of went briefly over this. We're going to hammer just a little more deeply with it. I do sit on NSF. It is recognized as a third-party testing facility for a lot of things. In fact, if you go home and look at some of your piping on your hot tubs, bathroom fixtures, water, wastewater, you will see this lovely little NSF stamp on there. I sit on the OSTDS wastewater committee. We meet annually, but what our task is to write protocol so states can have third-party testing on different types of OSTDSs. And we are looking at all kinds of new things because there are all kinds of emerging concerns in the wastewater field right now. But I deal specifically with the OSTDS division. And so what NSF Standard 40 does is it tests these units. And when we talk about aerobic treatment units, most of you all become familiar with the box with some kind of air blower in that. And then within that development, you have different types of technology. So you have what's called suspended technology, which means, for lack of a better term, the bugs are hanging out in that aerobic environment. You have fixed film, so we have some kind of submerged media in that wastewater, and so the bugs can hold on there, and we'll talk about what the benefits to that are. And then you have what are called unsaturated media filters. The project that we just completed with the state, the passive, is this unsaturated media filter. The difference between that one and the ones we're going to look at is it's non-proprietary. So what is happening is you can just have easy availability to something and you're not paying for the name. So we're not paying for Roxanne's Poo Guru. You as a homeowner, you as a septic tank contractor or a PE can go out and get these components, put them together in a system, and it's non-proprietary. So one of the things I think it's critical for this group to understand is that science has been tested for over 25 plus years. So it's not new, it's just we looked for a non-proprietary way, and I think the thought process was if it was non-proprietary, it was going to be extremely less expensive. So, and that is not always the case. NSF treatment standards, one of the things they always talk about is you need to know what you're treating before you can justify or really get excited about how well you treated. So one of the things that's very, very nice about NSF Standard 40 is we require that we know what the influent is that's coming into our systems, and we actually have guidelines. So when they talk about the BODs and TSS, you're talking about wastewater strength. So we want to know that any technology that's treated out there is given that apples to apples comparison, and that the wastewater strength is what we would typically see in an on-site system. So they don't let it go too low, hence the below 100. They don't let it go too high, the 300 to 350, depending on whether you're looking at BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, or TSSs. That tends to cover domestic strength waste, although nowadays with some of the low flow fixtures, we do see higher strength waste. But what we're not trying to look at is anything that is more of a commercial waste, so something coming out of a fried chicken joint or things like that. If you're going to deal with that, that's when you really need to get an engineer involved, and you need to think about the wastewater you're treating. They also have a component, they talk about pH, and then obviously the temperature. Your bugs can get a little sensitive. The reason they talk about pH is certain bugs don't like certain kinds of pH levels. This design of NSF Standard 40 was primarily back in the 70s. This has been around since the 70s. Technology itself has been around since the 50s. We predominantly saw ATUs. We are actually in a new protocol development for Standard 40 because of some of the new mousetraps that are coming out. Some of your media filters are slightly acidic, so that pH requirement might not be as necessary for them as it was for a standard ATU. What we're looking at before we can actually say something has passed NSF Standard 40 is 6 months worth of testing that meets the criteria you see at the bottom. So what we are saying, an average over that 6 months, their CBODs are at 25 or better. We have a lot of the technologies out there that will bring that number down to a 6. 10. TSSs has to be at a minimum at least treated to a 30, so you see that reduction from a 350 down to a 30. Like I said, a lot of them treat much better. We look to see if there's color, odor, oily films, things like that. Once again, that bug population with the pH. There's no criteria for pass-fail on the temperature or the dissolved oxygen, and the reason being is if your temperature doesn't stay where it's consistent and your dissolved oxygen doesn't stay where it's consistent, your bug population won't work, so you won't meet the COB or the TSS requirements. So in order, when somebody says, well, I've passed NSF Standard 40, what they're telling you is at a minimum they've passed that 25 and 30. The one thing that you see that's missing is that there's no discussion on nitrogen. And like I said, this standard started back in the 70s, and just like my instructors, we're not going to talk about nitrogen. So what we decided at NSF Standard 40, after talking with the Environmental Protection Agency that ran what they call an ETV test, we developed this NSF Standard 40, or 245. We originally wanted to make it a nutrient standard, so we were going to look at phosphorus and nitrogen. One of the things we found out is they're very different beasts. And so when we started putting together a testing, like I said, this is 6 months worth of testing that the manufacturer does not get to come on property and does not get to mess with their system. This is just like a homeowner would be operating it day in and day out with daily sampling taken. Sometimes it's composite sampling, sometimes it's grab sampling. So when we looked at developing this 245 standard, we realized we were really going to have to separate these standards, whether it was nitrogen or phosphorus. We reached out to states. The states told us nitrogen seemed to be a more critical concern right now, so we developed the 245 standard as a nitrogen standard. One of the things that does have to happen is Technology has to have either passed NSF Standard 40 in the past before they can go through 245, or they have to do the NSF Standard 40 testing while they're doing 245. So Roxanne's poo guru can't come out to NSF and say, I just want to do the 245 because Florida's concerned about nitrogen. I don't want to worry about BODs and TSSs. They actually have to have previously gone through this or worked through it together. So you notice the requirements going in are going to be the same. The requirements coming out, we still have that 25 on the CBODs, we have the 30 on the TSSs, but now what we're saying is we want to see a reduction of at least 50% of the TKN. One of the things I will always encourage you to spend a little time on is understanding what nitrogen we're talking about. Are we talking about organic, inorganic, total nitrogen, nitrate standards? When dealing with the BMAP, we talk a lot about nitrate standards, but yet we want to equate it to total nitrogen. There's a difference there, but what we're talking about here is a reduction of 50% of the TKN, which is the killed-all nitrogen. As Dr. Gao mentioned, this hasn't been accepted in the state of Florida. At this point, it is ready to be moved forward with TRAP, and I talked to Ed Bronco yesterday, and we are moving forward with that rule. So we're just waiting for it to get into the public review process, and once it does, then it'll become part of 6046, which is our governing rule for the on-site industry. So we'll be able to use the Leinert systems, and we'll be able to use 245, which will make a lot of manufacturers happy, because right now, as long as I test, I can come into states as a developed and accepted technology. And so by us not having that level, it takes away the availability of those folks who have gone through very rigid testing to come into the state. Dr. Gao mentioned performance-based treatment systems. So we have ATUs and we have performance-based treatment systems. This is actually a handout. If anybody would like it, we can get a copy to you to put on whatever website. And this presentation, I'm assuming, is going to be available, correct? But we use this during the training. We have ACT training, which is for the Department of Health employees as they become certified for inspections, and also our master septic tank contractors. But for us in this discussion, the benefit of this slide is to sort of talk about the treatment levels and what's required. So these are our baseline systems, so it's your conventional system, and this is your conventional system with 2 foot of good soils underneath. That's a requirement of new construction. If you go out and you look at some earlier systems, the minimum is supposed to be a minimum of 6 inches between whatever your restrictive layer is. In the state of Florida, we often are talking about our seasonal high water table between that and the bottom of the drain field. But new construction now is 24 inches. And it talks about the treatment level. The ATU, this is that standard. Then we have secondary treatment, so no nitrogen reduction talking, and then we have advanced secondary and advanced wastewater. The reason I like to use this slide is you see this really dark line here. Below that really dark line is what we call the allowances. And this is where Dr. Gao and I sort of go a little sideways. And it's not personal sideways at all. It's the engineer in me that says if the code book doesn't say I can't do it, therefore I should be able to do it as long as I can prove what I'm doing is healthy and safe for the environment. The reason people put in systems right now, and the reason we have operating permits and all the maintenance, is because we've allowed somebody to build what I like to call the mega mansion on a small piece of property. And so what we have done is through scientific results, we have said, because you're treating much higher than this 120, 240, so on an ATU you're at 25, you're at a 20, and so on. So you've treated it better. I'm not going to require to use quite as much soil to do your further treatment. But I'm not 100% sure that that's what it's going to do, so I require that operating permit, and I require an O&M service provider. I don't think the intention when we start talking about nitrogen reduction is to allow more construction of mega mansions. I think when we're talking about nitrogen reduction, we are saying in those existing homes or those homes we're going to allow people to build, we want them to take care of their nitrogen. And so we're not going to give these allowances. And if you look at what these allowances are, and I know this is fuzzy, and that's why I'm saying we can make that available to you, there's a reduction in their drain field. So that square footage of your drain field, let's say 400 square feet, we allow you to make it a smaller drain field. And then if you use a technology, an alternative drain field, the footprint goes even smaller. We allow you to increase your flows anywhere up to 100% depending on the level of treatment technology. I don't think that's our intent when we start talking about nitrogen reduction. So my challenge to the state is, if I'm not going to give you extras, and I'm going to require you to build your system just like you would with a baseline system, which is more square footage, more vertical separation, more setbacks to all the things we're concerned about, but I'm going to require you to treat to a higher level, I'm not sure we need to do all that monitoring because we're going to continue to move forward. So we are working with the Department of Health to try to set a separate part of the code that would deal with nitrogen reduction systems, not systems that people are putting in because they want to build a mega mansion on a smaller lot. But government moves slow, and Roxanne's viewpoint is not everybody else's viewpoint, and we're okay with that. The last standard we have is the Florida Keys standard, and that is sort of what we call the premier standard when we talk about advanced wastewater treatment standards, which are your larger plants. We don't currently have systems that we feel comfortably meet that, but we do have what we call the Florida Keys system. So we call those our 10-10-10-1 systems, which means we're getting the treatment down to 10-10-10, 10 on total nitrogen, and a 1 on phosphorus. A lot of the Keys systems actually did injection wells, so obviously you wanted your fecals down below detectable levels, so you were actually doing disinfection. All the other systems except for the Keys, we're going to use the soils again. But we have systems currently that do this level. So if you think nitrogen and you think a 10 total nitrogen, and then you add a drip irrigation system, your question about the seasonal high water table and how close we can get, we can take that waste. We know we've made it to a 10. That 10 is now mainly in the form of nitrate. I run a drip irrigation shallow. I run it through the vegetation on my property that I want to irrigate for some reason anyway, because I think I'm in Kentucky and I need Kentucky bluegrass. I can irrigate that way. The nitrogen goes up into that plant root system because that's what they want. They want that nitrate in their plant root system, and I get even further treatment. And with drip irrigation, I go extremely shallow. I also had a gentleman talk to me yesterday about evapotranspiration systems and other kinds of vegetative systems that would actually be a zero escape nitrogen system. So people are looking at other things out there, but we do have quite a few of these systems out there now. So 25 systems are currently available in the state of Florida right now to use that do different levels of nitrogen reduction. These systems will start you around 60%. You can get better reduction, like I said, if you use drip or low pressure dosing in a shallow environment. And then if we add the other systems that are out there through the new process, that'll give us 30. So the suspended units, this is a list of all the different ones, and I know I'm running short on time and we've all sort of gone a little bit long. But these are just some of the systems. I'm not telling you any are better than others. It just depends on your thought process and what you're looking for. But one of the things you're going to see is, in most cases, we've got some type of air that's coming in. We have different dispersal methodologies for that air. Some of these use more what we think about a fish tank bubbler. Some of these use, I call them a flat poker chip, but basically all these systems are going to use some kind of forced air. And we hear a lot about, well, I don't want to use an electrical component. It doesn't use a lot of air. One of the things we do test for at NSF is the amount of electricity it takes to run these different systems. It's in the dollar per day kind of category. We talk about, you mentioned hurricane, and I like the hurricane camping analogy. That was really nice. Same thing with these. One of the things we do test for is what happens on a power outage and what happens with these systems with a power outage. So you have those kind of opportunities. Some of these systems have built-in recycling possibility. So obviously that sludge is going to get moved back into the front end. Dr. Gao talked about how important that is for the food source. And obviously that first part of your tank, I think my battery's going down. First part of your tank is going to be mainly anoxic, so it doesn't have a lot of free oxygen. So in this category, we have lots of other systems. Fixed film are the ones I talked about with submerged media. The benefit to a fixed film system, so the ones we were looking at earlier, what happens is if Roxanne does 14 loads of laundry here, we will push out my bug population. And when we push out my bug population, I don't have the bugs to do the work that I need them to do. When Roxanne does 15 loads of laundry here, this is a submerged media. They sort of look like these little chicken kind of things. This is a sock. This one actually has a separate unit, a anoxic unit. What happens now is that bug holds on for dear life inside that media and can withstand those 14 loads of laundry, and then when we get back to normal, it can do its thing. It also can do the total opposite of that snowbird goes on vacation, there's no food source, now my little bugs get out there and become predators and go look for a food source. So we saw the industry go, we have different kinds of behaviors. Not everybody is there every day, not everybody behaves the same way, and so you see these kind of fixed film media filters. The difference with these versus the next slide we're going to look at is they are always going to be submerged in that wastewater. And then we have what we call just the unsaturated media filters. So these are going to be the proprietary ones versus the non-proprietary study we just did. And we actually have 4 natural and 4 artificial. This is where I cut my teeth in the media filters on one of the proprietary blends. And what's going to happen in these is these are more passive systems. There is no 24/7 blowing of some type of air. The air is actually pulled down through different venting in these different systems. And these are the natural ones. We have 3 medias that are some kind of a peat system. We have 2 that are sphagnums, and we have 1 that's a fibric peat system. So these are these 3 systems here. They've been around for quite a long time, even in the state of Florida. And then we actually have a byproduct reuse that is a coconut core. So when you think about all those little coconut mats and things like that, islands like Sri Lanka, they can't use this. It doesn't burn. It has a high lignin count. So does the fibric peat. It has a high lignin count. That means it's going to hang and stay solid a lot longer. And so you have some of these systems that you use, and you don't keep them saturated, and they are able to last 25, 30 years. I have some systems that have been around for in excess of 20 years that are still working without replacements. And then you have the artificial media. And the artificial media came around because of the concerns that in the beginning, all the natural media systems were peat. And when you think about the history of peat, it takes a long time to generate. We don't want to take away the natural peat bogs. The company I worked for came out of Ireland. If you're an Irish whiskey drinker, the reason it tastes different is because they are using the peat as the heat source, and that imparts the different flavor that you like in your Irish whiskeys. But because they were concerned about that, you had an industry that said, well, let's look at what we could do to do the same type, but we could use an artificial media that we wouldn't be raping, pillaging, and plundering natural resources. So you have basic 2 types. The one on this side is a cube, so it's a little foam cube. On this side, you have their sheets of man-made fiber. What's really nice about most of these products is they are byproduct reuse. And so these are leftover processes that have some kind of material that they can reuse and they can use. This one, it makes you think of a car seat. So like the little foam seats that you have. The interesting thing about this group is when you cut these pieces open, there's a huge amount of channels for both water, wastewater, air, all kinds of things to go through. These systems, because they recycle, just like the natural ones, can get your nitrogen down to those tins also. And so you have that availability. These are just going to be proprietary. And then Dr. Gao talked about the other studies there. One of the things he didn't talk about that I find very exciting from this study, is we got other things out of it. Not only did we get some technologies out of it, we got some wonderful tools out of it. And one of the tools we were able to utilize from this is we can actually now, we have a spreadsheet that's available at the Department of Health. You can go in as a community, you can put in what you think your treatment technology level is going to be, so how strong your waste is, what your Florida soil is, and we can kick out some numbers for you so you know what the true impact of your nitrogen is in that region. We also have a cost analysis tool, so you can go in and say, I want to do this, and it helps you put the pieces together so you know actual cost. And then we even have the nitrogen fate, so we were able to look at, so it's coming off a conventional drain field and the nitrogen is going away. And in this kind of soil, at what point do we have to be concerned? And as you can see, so, you know, this was prior to us doing certain things, so you can see how high our nitrate levels were, and this is after going in and putting some of these media filters. So we are actually able to quantify some of the math and the strategies we had thought would work and know that these kind of things are working. And because this was a study funded by the state, all these tools are available on the DOH website, correct? Yes. So you can go in and look. So it gives the community some options. So this gives me at least 30 options, and you can mix and match these. And
Sorry, Roxanne, those were the tools that we used to develop the plan.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And then the last one, and this is where I spent a lot of my time. I've been with the FAWA group as their executive director for about 12 years now. Prior to that, I would come and teach engineering and lab classes for them. I ran a lab at a university while I was a graduate student. So I've been around for a long time, but one of the areas of expertise, and I got to spend a lot of time in, is this decentralized OSTDS concept. So we always think it's either one or the other. It's the individual septic system, OSTDS at the home, or it's the central sewer. This is a concept that's gaining popularity around a lot of areas, and what it means is I can go into existing subdivisions, so we have a large density group, and I can actually do some engineering and still use OSTDS. So I can still use that on-site technology, and I can take that effluent after I treat it, bring it back into that community and make walking trails and things like that. Or when I'm looking at new construction, I can go in and I can do the same thing. And so I can, this is that Advantex technology, so on that second unsaturated media, the cloths that we're hanging down, you know, I can go into communities and we can take away some of the responsibility of those individual homeowners, bring the treatment level here, and then take that effluent back to the community for water reuse so that we get recharge right there in a community. So it can be done with existing, what we like to call them clustered or decentralized systems, or brand new construction. And I think that's one of the ones we fail to think about, is it's not just about single homes, or it's not just about central sewer. We have this ability to do these, or we can marry all of the different technologies together. So I like to end with a few thoughts. You know, we really need to look and see what our individual community needs and understand that there are different parts of our community that might need different things. We need to look at all the technologies out there, and we need to look hard. I always tell my contractors and my engineers and folks when we train them, that shiny brochure is not the one you want to be looking at. If it's an NSF Standard 40, tell them you want their NSF Standard 40 data. NSF can't give it to you. We can't give it to you as committee members, but you can call Roxanne's Poo Guru and they can give you that book. And it's going to take you through what happened when we turned the power out, what happened when they did a lot of laundry, those kind of things. And then make sure you really look at a true cradle-to-grave feasibility study, understanding that you have lots of different options. You never want to take an option off the table, and you want to understand that we have lots of options. Outside the box. Nobody ever wants to think outside the box. One of my favorite professors used to say, we're just going to shift the dimensions of the box so we are always inside the box. One of the other things, we love to have field trips out at our training center. We're not that far away. I drove over this morning, a little over an hour and a half. We're in Lake Alfred. We're right off I-4 on exit 48, halfway between Tampa and Orlando. You can go to Disney or you can go to Busch Gardens after the tour. We have all 25 technologies out there. They are working with water. so we can play in them without worrying about getting contaminated. And then we have 3 fully functioning wastewater systems that are actually, I live on property and things like that. So we have that availability out there. So we've done several field trips with some of the basin management groups. We had a realtors tour. We've had IFAS there, different groups from different universities there. So we'd be more than willing to maybe not house your Christmas party, but at the same time, we would love to have a tour of your group. And then lastly, here is my contact information.
And I would imagine a lot of the information is also on your website, or not?
Not so much. We are a small staff of 2. We're working on a half right now, and we are our website.
Okay.
So no, but if you send to my email, we actually have a picture tour that you can get and things like that. But no, we're yeah. Sorry, it's sadly lacking. We're not IT web people.
And do you keep information on pricing of these systems?
We will reach out to either our contractors in the area, or we will get you a contact to the manufacturer. One of the things we have noticed is if you price that system in Miami, it might be one price versus up in Crestview, it's another. And then, of course, it's going to get with a quantity. That was, I'll be honest, one of the reasons I was very successful in the decentralized is because I was coming in, working with the developer, and we were going to use 400 systems versus one system. And obviously that changes the pricing, but we can put you in touch with the right folks.
Okay. Clarification questions quickly?
NS 245 is not currently the standard, but you expect that it will be.
Yes. It's in the rule revision.
Okay.
It's included in the revised
Right.
rule.
Okay. I keep hearing nitrogen at 10. I thought our discharges into our highways, et cetera, our goal was sub 7. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, for reuse water, our goal is, yes, 6.
Right. So that's
But-
twice as much. But that's not reuse.
But this is before it goes into the soil and the
Right.
drain field, so you
Yeah.
get
So
further
you're-
reduction.
Right. Your end of pipe at a wastewater treatment plant tends to go into, I don't know what your plant is, but it tends to go somewhere where it immediately hits water. Not always. What we're saying is at the end of the pipe, that 10, we now are going into the soils, and at a minimum, we get a 30% reduction with a conventional drain field. With a drip irrigation system, you tend to see another additional 50 to 70% reduction.
Okay, so there's a bunch of homeowners in Brevard County, hopefully, that are going to watch today or in the future. And if someone has an older septic system, okay, and obviously the tax dollars are not going to pay to replace that, I don't think, in most cases, who would they contact to put in, to install one of these newer systems, just as a public, not a company, but just, who would you contact if you wanted to put a new septic system in your home in Brevard County because you got a 50-year-old system that you know is failing?
All right, so you can contact a local contractor, or you can go through your Department of Health and they will give you the local contractor. One of the things, though, I would like to encourage you to do is, I do sit on those BMAP committees, and one of the things that is available to communities is to get the funding to use for OSTDS upgrades. So where we typically look for the funding to do a septic to sewer conversion, you as a community can apply for grant funding. We have over $1 million right now in Wakulla and Leon County that is for these OSTDS upgrades, and they have applied to continue that project on. So that funding is available. It's just the communities, the city communities have to ask for it instead of asking for a septic to sewer dollar. They have to ask for an OSTDS. So your community can request those dollars, and they can be used for nitrogen reduction. It's just we've not seen too many communities that have done that as of yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Charlie.
So,
Last question.
Yeah, so it's telling we have a lot of different systems available. We've heard from the speakers today, and that's really great. But, we've narrowed the systems down that are within 55 feet of the lagoon. So based on those conditions, would there be a kind of a subgroup of these systems that might best suit our applications to achieve our goals?
And probably, and maybe what could happen is that if I get more familiar with that subset, and thank you for reaching out, I certainly appreciate it, that's one of our tasks on the BMAP, is we look at different areas and we sort of say, this is what you should be looking at. This is going to meet your footprint sizes. This is going to meet your treatment levels, and things like that. So, certainly if we can become more familiar with what you're seeking, and sorry, I just didn't get as much homework as I would like to get in, we could help with bringing that 30 down to a manageable number that might work better for you in your situation.
Can we hold questions for the panel? So I'm going to take a 5-minute break. Is that good? And then we'll set up the panel. We'll really focus in on those questions that, as they apply to those 55 yards from the water, those problems we want to resolve here. Great. Well, those were excellent presentations. Lots of possibilities. And so I'm sure we've stimulated a lot of questions here. Let's start. Yes, John.
Let me maintain my reputation as a spring butt and go to what I think involves us very directly. The knothole through which all our activity and the trust fund flows is approved lagoon plan that Tetra Tech put together. And so I guess the question is two parts. One, to you, if you had a chance to look at the lagoon plan, from your viewpoint, is it adequate? Is it useful? Does it have the stuff in it that you write in it? And then the question to you is would you have the same assessment vis-a-vis the presentations we've had? And do we need to add NSF 245 as soon as it's approved? How good is our lagoon plan vis-a-vis the technologies and science that you're advocating?
We would both have to say, I think what we're hearing is, we probably need to look at your lagoon plan. I have been in the past, have paid attention to this discussion, and I've been at some of your other discussions, but to actually say I've pulled that plan up and read through it, I apologize, I have not.
Could we ask perhaps, Virginia, that you might carry on a dialogue? And yeah, good.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
And I think,
I've read the lagoon. Yeah, I've read the lagoon plan. And one of the things in lagoon plan, if you apply, you ended up with a dollar cost per nitrogen, okay? And that is where you kind of cut off your septic to sewer conversions based on numbers of $20,000, $25,000 per household. What I would say that would have an effect is some similar system like a step system where you're now down in the $9,000, $10,000 number. That opens that up to, if you reevaluate those costs, you could actually include more septic to sewer programs based on your pound per nitrogen plan from Tetra Tech. So,
well, one of the tasks we have on this committee is to recommend changes to the lagoon plan once a year. And I think this consideration of these technologies and opportunities is something that ought to be in the next revision we're looking at. And I think, Virginia, that falls on staff.
and I guess my comment is, the 55 number, the 55 yards or whatever the number that you came up with was not necessarily based on there's no pollution past that point. It just didn't make sense economically to go anything past that point.
Yeah, and I want to agree with you, John, and because we worked on a $20,000 per unit, and the number of septic tanks is only 15,000 that actually fall within 55 yards or 150 feet. And I was sitting and thinking, the concepts of these new systems make sense if you had a vertical distance, lived on top of a hill where the river was right below you. But for the majority of Brevard County, even at 150 feet or 300 or 600 feet, you're still essentially in the waterway. And we've got almost twice as many septic systems between 150 feet and 600 feet as we do right there on the river. So if we have the ability financially to do programs that'll allow us to hit all 15,000 and then reach another 10,000 without spending any more money, we could be more effective, I think. Is that what you said, John? We're in agreement on that?
Precisely, yes, we always agree.
Go ahead.
We can certainly, our duty will be to look at this language when we do the next update and see what we need to update in here. This section was particularly loose in that, here is our analysis for what we think should be directly connected to sewer. Here's how we prioritized septic systems where, it didn't look feasible to connect to sewer, but there are these other technologies, and we used some round numbers of $16,000 to do an upgrade in place, and we used our prioritization process to come up with those first priorities. But in the Myra area, right, that is a project area, and in the MICO project area where we had specific septic systems that we were going to upgrade, but instead we have a substitution project where we are connecting the entire community to sewer because we were able to cobble together other funding sources. So the plan accommodates those sorts of changes. But if there's anything in here that is, blocking what seems to be the best path forward, we'll clear that up.
There also seems to be something that improving economy and enlarged receipts from the sales tax might change our thinking. So far, we've been saying, gee, the money's coming in sooner, year zero, and money's coming in larger, greater receipts. And our approach has been, let's spend it faster inside the existing plan. It strikes me that there may also be, we're going to get 10 years worth of half-cent sales tax. It strikes me there may also be opportunities to reach further from the river with sewer septic upgrades and take on projects that have been outside the cost boundary of the original plan, but which ought to be there as options beyond spend it faster. Because if we're all done spending faster for what's there right now, we may run out of stuff to do after year 8 or that sort of thing. We need to be thinking about an opportunity B that could come along if the receipts are going to run higher than the 320 or 360 anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously are, but, and maybe this is simplistic, but those 15,000, we need, if you're on the river, you need to get off of septic and onto some kind of sewage system. But if you're close, these other options become something that we may want to support, and I do think we'll have the funding.
How many of those that are really, really close to the lagoon are outside of sewer systems that we currently have available?
Most.
That's what I thought.
Right.
And
so we're hooking up, it's just under 2,500 of the 15,000 that are within 55 yards of the lagoon or an open water connection to the lagoon.
So what are we doing with the other 13,000?
We ranked them for whether they were our highest priorities to do some sort of upgrade in place, and about 1,500 bubbled to the top of that list. And the remainder, we're not doing anything unless we can come up with more cost-effective means or more money.
Is it possible with some of these systems that she was talking about where you can do a group at one time
that may lower the cost factor down enough if we could do a stretch of those homes?
It's conceivable. I think it's a lot easier to do with new construction, and I'll ask Roxanne to answer the question. But, so with existing infrastructure, is that going to be your house that puts in enough of these centralized systems to treat your whole neighborhood? Or, what vacant lot is going to take everybody else's? Is that a fair?
And you have to get creative. I'm not going to tell you from an engineering perspective, you don't have to get creative, but, we've gone into, certain easements that are in there and things like that. And one of the nice things is a lot of your pictures showed how not aggressive the landscaping is once you put things in. So you have the opportunities to go into certain areas and no one knows what's in the middle of those easements and things like that. So is it more difficult in existing? Yes. Is it impossible? No. And does the dollar amount go down substantially when you look at a community? It certainly does.
I like the system that you showed at Vandex is the same, manufactured by the same company that we buy all of our products for the step system. So really, what you're talking about is decentralized sewer systems. So you put in a treatment facility somewhere in a neighborhood, and you're using a step system to pump, same concept, pump and treat the effluent. So where our pricing is about $8,000 or so for a complete system, you're about doubling that to put in the Advantage system, or maybe, so you're still in your $20,000 or $25,000 number, and now you have, like you say, you have a system that is now controlled by a government that's looking at it versus a homeowner that doesn't necessarily want to get involved with treating their own septic, on their property. They want it gone. So they're reasonable. I mean, you take South Brevard County on the Barrier Island, it's probably perfect opportunities with some, you might have some parklands or something along those, pieces of property that you could put, and they're very small footprint, like she showed. And they're stackable. So if you got X amount of homes, you start off with a few of them, and you just keep adding components to it. It's not popular in Florida, really popular in Washington, out west, up in the mountains. Actually, South Alabama Utilities is treating, I think, 12,000 homes with these decentralized plants. They have 3 or 4 decentralized systems like that. So it's moving this way.
Back to the Lagoon plan then.
Thank you.
We've got more money coming in probably. We've got new technology emerging and existing technology that's proving itself and advertising itself. Do we have funding and a mechanism to have Tetra Tech and you guys do a routine review and upgrade of the Lagoon plant, say every year, every 2 years, every 3 years? There's a great plan that was signed. We're going to make maintenance fixes on it as we go forward. But is there a review and reassessment and perhaps an upgraded plan anywhere in our current timeline? And should there be?
Yeah, so it's part of the $1 million a year that's allocated to respond. Most of that $1 million goes to monitoring the effectiveness and performance of the actual projects that we construct. But part of that goes to reviewing, upgrading, rewriting the plan. Is that your question?
And we'll see that each winter as you come forward.
Yep, each spring.
Excellent, thank you.
So, and I think that's a necessity. I guess just a quick question on that. Is there really anything in the Lagoon plan that needs to be changed to accommodate what we're talking about now? Because essentially, we're talking about things that are conventional septic conversions. And once those are allowed from a regulatory standpoint, whether they go onto a central government-operated conventional wastewater system or a decentralized but permitted through the regulatory agency, that becomes a treatment technology. We're getting them off of conventional septic. Does the plan not already essentially accommodate that type of approach within this?
My impression is that it does, but I don't want to say that without rereading it word for word with that question in mind.
'Cause I think that's
And
what-
I mean, I know there were a couple little statements that Rob pointed out that were misleading on the step system, so,
I think that's one of the important things for us too, is to recognize that there's a couple different steps in here, and one of them is that, is for us to look for barriers that would prevent people from being creative, because and if those exist, those are certainly things that we ought to work on, but we've got to particularly, and I think probably the sewer side of this is one of the most complex areas that we have to deal with, because it's not just a technology, it has to do with the government, and there's a whole lot of politics involved and a lot of other moving pieces, so looking at...
And homeowners.
And homeowners and where they're at, so looking at, truly what the barriers that might exist for government entities, because ultimately they're the ones that are promoting these types of conversions, and making sure that those barriers don't exist, rather than getting too focused on technology, other than educating those governments on what options are out there that might be viable for them.
Is there not also perhaps an outreach from this dialogue into the county and then perhaps into city as well? Land development codes, zoning rules, site planning, review processes, permitting processes, and so on. I mean, you're talking about cluster approach. How is that treated inside? How is that presented to and treated from a governmental regulatory viewpoint, where somebody comes in and says, I've got 200 acres I want to develop, I want to put this many units on it? Is there anything that individual run into going through the government entity that's going to give them the go-ahead to build it, that says, gee, you ought to think about cluster, or we'll give you a penny for it, or maybe even require it? Yes, no, no.
Not right now. We've talked about overlay districts, right? Taking that same 55-yard analysis or some other variation on that and coming up with an overlay of where are the areas that are most sensitive, potentially posing the most risk to lagoon water quality, and having some, additional standard for review for development requirements on those properties, but nothing's been proposed.
I don't see that as us, personally, I don't see that as our job, but we have at least some kind of advisory role to county government in this, and I think someday, I think ultimately it ends up with you, but, and your side of the table, but I really think that there are things coming along that are amenable to improved regulation by government, not amenable to the smothering with money. I don't know how that gets handled, but I think it's in your world.
Well, I think it's outside of this, but it fits exactly in. If we can get rid of if we can transfer 2,000 homes that are on the water from septic to sewage, we've accomplished something. However, if 2,000 new homes are built with septic directly on the river, we've accomplished nothing.
That's true.
And so the rest of county government in some way, planning, zoning, rules, have to be in line with the goals of the people that voted for us to do this work.
Do we have a
zoning rule? You could simply educate land developers that monies are available for improved sewage treatment on-site or off-site.
As it stands right now, from what I've seen, even if they want to hook up to septic, they're sometimes restricted from doing so. We've got some backwards stuff set up still, David, at the county level.
You mean hook up to sewer?
Yeah, where instead you ended up having to put septic in.
Virginia, is there anything happening at the building department when a land developer comes in and says he wants to develop these 200 acres on the lagoon, that the building department says, hey, there may be funds available to supplement an improved treatment system, with respect to their plan that they're submitting? Does the building department make that suggestion at all? Or are they even aware?
No, and the plan is not written to partner with new development, right? The plan is about cleaning up existing problems. So if that's the direction you want to go in, that's a new.
Well, we've discussed minimum thresholds of cost and improvement here before without there being, much done about it, what that minimum cost might be. I think we've said, John Smith at his house couldn't really submit a package to us for his property, but a large development that we're using here as an example, I think, I would, if I were a developer, I'd want to submit something, to us for review and says, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna, connect to, we're gonna do this conventional system here that's gonna leach, nitrogen and phosphorus into the lagoon, or if I can get some financial help, this is the system I'll put in, and it will remedy the problem before it even starts.
And I would add one more, or we have a minimum, just as we have goals of what the reductions to be, that nothing new can go in that exceeds those goals. So if our goal is that nitrogen leaves at 10 from the pipe before it hits the ground, no system can be allowed that it exceeds 10 in any new construction or reconstruction. Because it doesn't do us any good to go clean up 50 years of mess if we continue to create it on the back end.
That's true.
We can always reject an application, by a developer submitting something, so it's not like there's a burden on us to.
It's not within our purview and it doesn't come to us.
Yeah.
But there is a fundamental question that I haven't heard an answer to yet. Inside county government, inside the role of the county manager and county staff, is there an effective, knowledgeable, working interface between the P&Z world and the world of the Department of Natural Resources? Is the P&Z world cognizant of these technologies, of these opportunities? Are there things they ought to do on the incentive side that might take some of our money, or on the regulatory side that might force them to do something different than what they're doing right now? It's a bureaucratic question, but
Right. Where I've seen that come up since adoption of the plan has been at the board meeting, in zoning meetings where folks were going for increased density, and the board was able to sort of grapple with that. I don't know how to describe the situation, right, where they're able to look at what's in the best public interest. And yes, you could have this density if you do these sorts of upgrades to reduce the impact of your proposed footprint. But it's not happening at the staff level. It's happening at the elected official.
And the staff level is where most work is done.
If I could add to the discussion, what Virginia is describing is an ad hoc basis, case-by-case basis, if you will, and it's dependent upon whether a board member or the multiple board members are concerned about that matter. There's a mechanism where they can engage in a voluntary discussion to adopt a binding development plan that would incorporate that. But that's not a regulatory requirement. That's not a planning and zoning requirement. And staff can only enforce what the Board of County Commissioners has enacted as county code. So if there is a consensus of this board to suggest any consideration of changes to the Planning and Zoning Board to perhaps in this case create an overlay regulation pertaining to those areas within close proximity of the river, then you could vote and make a recommendation that the board consider that.
Can we do that today?
And can we ask for some assistance on how to request staff to draft that?
you would first need to have a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and if they wanted to direct staff to do that, that would be the next step.
So can we make that motion today is my question.
You could, or you could think about how you want to approach that and bring it up at the next
I
meeting.
don't think it's right at this point. I think there ought to be an opportunity for Virginia to carry on a dialogue inside the county staff and come back to us perhaps at the next meeting and say, there might be a role for this board to get outside the boundaries of the trust fund and the plan and make a recommendation to the rest of the county staff through the Board of County Commissioners to bring P&Z mechanics more in line with the goals that are presented in Lagoon Plan. I don't think we're ready right now, but I think it's a darn good discussion.
Yeah, and I would just echo what you said. I think it's really important that we do this, but I think we need to make sure we do it correctly and have the right language in there, you know, because we're going to talk about, are we going to use impact fees? Is this a performance standard that we're talking about? So I think we get the language right and with the rationale that would help our cost, you know, move this forward.
And Virginia, I hate to put more stuff on you, but could. But as a group, I guess maybe we need to pass a request to you to look deeper into and come back to us with how this group may ask for that overlay to happen. Not to actually do it, but to give us the process that we would need to go to the county commission to encourage an overlay of the goals of the Lagoon group with P&Z and all of county stuff. And come back to us and tell us how to write. And somebody write it between now and then and put it on an agenda.
And perhaps also ask the other department or departments in county government who are involved with these things to come to us and just give us a presentation to tell us what they are doing to achieve the goals that are in the Lagoon Plan and what they would need help with to do a better job of doing that. Yeah.
I think that part is really important because what we're talking here about are things that are going outside of our primary funding mission that might be contradicting what we're attempting to do. Because I've heard two sets of discussions here today. One, I'm in violent agreement with as far as making sure that there's not things that are going on that are counter to our objectives. The other I heard was taking trust fund money and supporting and considering projects that are new development and candidly that are new loadings and contributions to the lagoon. I, at a personal level, have no support for that. Agreed. And think that that is a very significant policy decision that we ought to have the discussion on what our objectives and our recommendations are and go forward, you know, very thoughtfully because we talked about development and new development within the area, but to John's point, I think there may be multiple activities that are going on within county and city governments that may be either positively or negatively impacting the objectives of what we're trying to do, and the better we can convey what those are and where our position might be and how that affects what we're trying to accomplish, I think the more well received will be and the more impactful will be.
I have a question as well. Is it possible for an individual homeowner to apply for Lagoon funds in order to make some of these potential upgrades? If they fall within that?
Didn't we discuss that last time?
Well, the distance was only one of 5 criteria. So we applied, and we also looked at soils, depth of groundwater, density, multiple other factors, and used those to identify those highest priority properties. So unless you want to not do those properties and do some other property instead that according to the data we have, poses a lower risk to water quality in the lagoon. Or if you want to take some of the additional revenues coming in and say, we're going to spend more on this, or if we do a handful of them and determine that we can do them for less money so that with the same pot of money, we can do more. So, you know, there are several ways to get there, but I'm not sure how you want to get there.
I think we have to be careful of dealing, on the question of dealing with individual homeowners too, because we have government entities that are developing projects and developing plans, and some of which may be a centralized sewer approach, some may be decentralized on-site treatment systems, some may be septic retrofits, and if we get too much in the middle of dealing with individuals while these other plans are moving forward, it may just get really complicated and difficult to move forward at a bigger level.
Yeah, and remember, during our substitution discussion, there's a cost for us to administer these things, an overhead, and we were hitting that with things that were already with cities that were only $5,000 and $10,000. So if a community were to come forward as a group, and I think this was our discussion in reference to that letter last time, and a whole community came and said, look, we have 80 homes and we want to do something, that would be something we could look at. But an individual, I think, would be cost ineffective for us to administer. A $20,000, it cost us more money to spend $20,000 than 20.
Okay. Do we have more questions for our panel?
I do.
Yes.
I do.
Well, okay, go ahead. And then
We've got
Danielle.
an esteemed panel here, and we're not even asking them questions.
Yeah.
Rob, I want to ask you, you guys have adopted the STEP program, and you've explained why. I want to ask, did you evaluate alternatives to this, and why did you choose the STEP? And reciprocally, I want to ask the other panel members, if you were lobbying him to implement something alternative to the STEP program, what would that have been and why?
Okay, I looked at, and I'll tell you how we came to the conclusion of STEP system. One was I was back out trying to peddle gravity sewer to residents, and like I said, in 2007 we tried it, we worked, it failed miserably. And then in 2013, I think, is when we had the big algae blooms, and all of a sudden the whole lagoon was turning colors and everything else. And the mayor at the time, you know, stood up and said, "Oh, the people are ready now. They're going to all abandon their septic systems and hook to sewer." And so I was thrown out into the wolves again, and I went out there and I said, "Okay, I got a project that I can easily do. 18 homes. Already has a lift station in it. It's going to cost about $11,000, $12,000 to a property." Sent the letters out to the 18 homes and was going to have a meeting 3 weeks later. Within a week, I had 6 of them back, said, "No, we don't want it." Had the meeting, there were 6 individuals there, 5 of them, "No, we don't want it." 1 was in favor. So at that point, I said, "What would it take you to get off your septic system and onto our sewer system?" And they said, "If you can find something that's not mandatory, and if you can find something that's cost considerably about the same as what a septic tank replacement is or a drain field replacement, we'll be willing to do it." So that was my charge at that point by those residents, to go out and find something. And the only thing that I could find was either we're going to be looking at some type of a grinder system or a step system. I had worked with step systems at Palm Bay. We had about 80 of them. They were old, 40-year-old systems that, you know, the designs today are 10 times better than what it was, but they were very low maintenance. You would have a pump that would go bad. They were lasting 6, 7 years. It was a $200 pump. You go out and you buy another one and you install it. So I was familiar with it. Port St. Lucie had some. If you look at ITT Development, which is Palm Coast, they have 14,000 of them. So they're out there. It's just nobody really paid much attention to it. And I didn't want, like the questions asked before, I did not want something that was going to drive up my wastewater prices to the existing customers, and I didn't want something that was going to become a maintenance nightmare that I was going to have to go out there and hire a bunch of people. The biggest thing to get over in the being a person that was used to gravity sewer systems, the biggest thing was to get over that concept that I have to go now onto the private property. Because the way that most utilities look at is they go drive down that street with blinders on. They don't want to know what happens outside of the right-of-way. They want to be responsible from the right-of-way in to the wastewater plant. They don't want to be responsible for anything on private property. And the other thing that I had to get over, and what finally sold me was, I thought of it and I said, these people already have septic systems. They're not abusers. They've had to live with them for 20, 30 years. They're used to it. They're used to people coming in and pumping out their septic systems and stuff like that. So it's not going to be an invasion of their privacy. Once I got over those things, then it became, the numbers fell in line. The residents came in. I mean, you asked before how many people were going to hook up. Well, you have the whole spectrum. You have 10% of the population that it's great. They feel that they don't know even know if it's going to help the lagoon, but it's a good idea because it can't hurt the lagoon. You have 10% of the people that it is government's intrusion on their private property, and by God, I have the right to have my septic tank, and that's what I want. And then you have everybody else in the middle that looks at it from an economic standpoint. And that's kind of where we're at. So.
If you were lobbying the city of Vero Beach, for an alternative to the STEP program, what might it have been, and what would have been your case?
Well, I would imagine that you charge some service fee to the homeowner, right?
They pay a sewer rate.
A sewer rate. You know, if you, for some area, if you do not connect it to sewer and you are, for example, using one of the in-ground system, which will be regulated as a conventional system, no operating permit and no routine inspections, and they may actually do not have that fee. Mm-hmm. So this is maybe one of the advantage they may actually look at to say, hey, I want to go with this. But like I said, in this area, the groundwater table is relatively high. And the in-ground system may not be the best system to actually suit this area. And sometimes you can certainly raise the bottom of the drain field using the fill system and the bond system, but that also, increase the footprint of the actual system because you need to build a shoulder, and that's not available for many of the small, parcels. Mm-hmm. So there is a advantage and disadvantage of that. Okay. It's probably a case-by-case situation.
Roxanne, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. I guess the first question I would have asked is, what were we doing with the water that we treated? What's your discharge mechanism?
We're 100% reuse.
Okay, so then that would lead me to us making sure that we looked at systems that were 100% reuse, which would be the drip irrigation. And then, we would have looked at the individual lot sizes and things like that, because I understand your cost. In fact, that's why I asked you if we had worked together before, because I remember Debbie Mayfield having this discussion with us back then. I would just encourage them to have looked at maybe some of the proprietary systems that we had out there. Because one of the things I will tell you is I think the numbers are often inflated. We're looking at individual cost. We're not bidding it the same way. If we had the same incentives, like you asked me about, funding, we make that assumption that it's always the individual homeowner that's funding, their system, when we know that there's availability for that funding to be for OSTDS upgrades. We just have, as communities, haven't done it. So that would have been did we seek out the funding to use for OSTDS upgrades? Did we look at the reuse potential on each piece of property? And then did we evaluate it from a mass versus an individual site, and could we have got the prices where we wanted them to be? And I'm not sure we always do that. Not saying that we couldn't, but you asked me if I was going to lobby him, how to go about that. So, I think the biggest mechanism is we don't go seek that funding for that individual homeowner that we need to seek, because they're 1/3 of the waste, and they have the right to get at least 1/3 of the funding to upgrade their systems, and that's not currently being done.
Okay, Danielle. Oh.
Yeah. I like that answer.
Could I make a statement about the two?
I'm sorry?
I mean, as far as, I'd like to counter just to what they said. One, when you talk about the cost, you now have a sewer bill, but you have no future cost again. With the system that you have, if it's continued to be whatever advanced treatment unit or anything else, you have an ongoing cost of replacement at some period of time. So if you look at over time and money of what they're paying on a sewer bill versus what that another upfront cost is, they come out pretty close over a period of time. The other, on the treatment units, people don't, like I said before, people don't necessarily want to treat their own wastewater on their own property. And what we've gone by where there are ATUs right on the water, and they're some of the first ones that want to connect up, because they have this ongoing cost of $250 to the state, and then another cost to whoever their company is that's maintaining it, and then the air pumps are going out, and they're hundreds of dollars for an air pump and the installation. And we went past two of them that were there, and they were the first one that says, I want off this system, let me hook up to yours. So you got to look at it from what does the resident want to.
I think it's important that you guys monitor the systems at each property too, right?
Yes.
So you don't have a program where you're leaving each homeowner to their own devices to, enforce their own environmental quality on their property.
Correct.
I think that's very important. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're going to add to that.
Counterpoint. And once again, that goes back to the old thought process. We don't have to have homeowners monitor their own properties. We can set up different kinds of utilities. We've done it through homeowner associations and things like that. So it's that shifting that paradigm and thinking outside the box and setting up abilities to not have that homeowner be their group. I mean, you have a huge study going on right now, or a project going down in the Florida Keys where the utility is owning all the individual systems, and even if they're in the middle of the yard, they're getting the easement to go work on that system. And so they're taking away that responsibility from the homeowner, but still using OSTDSs. So it's that movement towards a new thought process and understanding that we do have the availability. It just hasn't happened because, as you said, that 10%, it's my property, I don't want to change anything. So we have to help with that shift of that paradigm.
Danielle.
Aren't
And then
the
Stephanie.
aerobic systems that require the permitting and the maintenance considerably more expensive than the anaerobic systems to install?
You're talking a basic conventional system versus something that treats nitrogen? Would you be, that's what?
Well, I heard him talk about the maintenance fee. I had one of those septic systems, and I paid the maintenance fee, and I paid for the permit every 2 years, I think it was. Yeah, and when I asked the builder what it would be like if I had to replace it, he said approximately twice the cost.
Yeah, and that's a fair thing, and this is where you have to do that apples to apples comparison. His wastewater treatment plant now has to treat nitrogen.
Okay.
So he doesn't get to still just to be a conventional old-fashioned wastewater treatment plant. So we have to get that understanding that as a person who's generating waste, we all have to be the same apple. So that means, yes, it costs more because we're asking your conventional system to treat nitrogen just like he had to upgrade his plant. And so there is a cost associated with, a conventional system can go in for, well, that's probably a basic substandard, so our subsurface, I don't mean substandard, subsurface system, so around 5,000. But you can also do a basic ATU, starting around 8 or so with some drip and things like that. So you have options. A lot of it is very site-specific on what you're having to do, but I think what we're missing is we're requiring one to treat to one level, and for some reason we're not requiring the other to treat to another level, but we're okay with that discussion from that homeowner, well, I just want to put the cheapest one in. Well, you generate nitrogen, you need to treat your nitrogen.
And the sewer rate, how does that compare to the municipal sewer rate?
It's the same. I mean, a typical homeowner on our system is going to pay about $38 a month for sewer.
Okay.
$20 minimum, $55 maximum, and the average is about $38 of what they're paying for.
And there are some of these step systems installed in Palm Bay already?
There's about 80 of them.
80
up along Turkey Creek where it was too low for gravity sewer, and they pump up the hill to the gravity sewer. So they're old, conventional, low pressure. What we put in was more of a high pressure system. So to answer your question about, you have a lot of long linear roads down along the barrier island, step system is perfect design for that because you can pump long distances. They pump it 8 gallons a minute at 150 feet ahead. So it's really a well pump that was installed, and that's why you have all the filtering and everything else, is to keep all the solids in the septic tank and only pump the clear effluent versus a grinder system's a macerator. So it chops everything, and then you have clogging and having to pig lines and do all kinds of high maintenance activities. You don't have that with
So one more question. How would you rate the levels of septic systems? If you were to give any kind of rating, would you say there would be none, and then NSF 40, and then the NSF 245? Did I get that number right?
Are you talking about the removal efficiency? You're talking
Yes.
about?
Like if I'm going to purchase a home, could there be some sort of rating that could simplify things for me?
I guess depending on, what specific, pollutant you're looking at, specifically for nitrogen. I think I have a table with me that actually showing the nitrogen removal rate of various different kinds of systems, and, including ATU and PBTS. This one has the removal rate, but does not have the removal rate of each individual system. But there's web links in here that you can access to see those systems, nitrogen removal rate.
Could I call the county if I'm looking at a house and find out exactly what the NSF rating is?
You can certainly contact the county health department. And you can talk to us too, if you want to know more about, systems.
But there's currently not an easy way for the average bear
Yeah,
to
I'm just thinking
determine-
if I'm a homeowner comparing houses.
Right.
And I want the least impact on the lagoon and
Best value.
the best value. How do I evaluate that? How do I compare apples to oranges when I'm looking at houses?
Go ahead.
I think that goes back to the earlier question the gentleman that was sitting, I think there asked. And that's where we make sure that we provide you with a list of, here are the systems that treat to this level. So I look at your plan and we find out what your level is. So here are the systems that treat to the level you're looking at. And here are the manufacturers you contact, because, as an individual homeowner, you're going to have a discussion with either the manufacturer or the contractor about his installed cost. I can't control that, but I can tell, what we can as an organization and the state can tell you is these specific systems treat to this level. So we can give you that list, and then based off that list, it becomes, do you want to go to Publix or do you want to go to Winn-Dixie to get your apples?
I'm just thinking if there was some sort of streamlined explanation for a homeowner to be able to compare and to make the NSF 245 more desirable or more valuable to a homeowner because it's reducing nitrogen levels overall, or the STEP system. I mean, just some sort of comparison to make things easier to convey.
I think what you run into is, one, you had an ATU, but there's probably very few ATUs in Brevard County. They're going to have a record of it because I'm sure they got an operating permit for it. So that's the only way you're going to know if you're buying a home of what's existing or what's not existing. And then it's going to come down to is cost. When that septic tank contractor comes out and starts telling you what the cost of things are, it's going to matter to you when you're writing that check. And you also got to remember that there's a lot of challenges out there because homes built prior to 1983 are already at a disadvantage because they only have 6 inches of clearance between the bottom of their drain field and seasonal high water table. So you're probably getting zero treatment out of some of those versus the numbers that we're talking about. 30% is based on a conventional system with proper distance between the drain field, bottom of the drain field, and the seasonal high water table. So it goes up. I mean, I've had people where they've gone in to build a home and we weren't, 2 or 3 years prior, and they're telling me they're paying $35,000, $40,000 for an advanced treatment unit because, as you said earlier, you're trying to put this gigantic house on this, shoestring it on this little thing, and it becomes very, very complicated to get the design of those. So it's something you brought up. They need to start tracking it. It needs to be able to be available that somebody can look at it, but I don't think. Other than the
I don't
permit, I don't
think
think
that-
anybody knows where anything on a lot is, and you wouldn't know.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Okay.
I think the members of this group mentioned that, probably not dealing with each individual homeowners directly because there's, regional planning issues. Currently, I think DOH and Roxanne, you're probably involved in that too, working with Northwest Florida Water Management District, trying to upgrade maybe 60 to 70 conventional systems in the Wakala Spring Basin into the nitrogen removal system. And the question that you asked is actually being asked by the local stakeholders too, how they can actually find out what's the best system to use. It turned out that most of the homeowners, do not have this kind of capability to compare all the technical information and the cost information to choose best one. So I think Leon County and Wakala County decided that they will be, serve that purpose. They can hire the contractors and consultants to actually help them to determine and select the system for that particular, those subdivisions that they want to put in the upgraded system. Exactly which system to use is a decision made by the county based on the suggestion from the consulting companies.
Okay. I'm going to need a motion to keep going here because we run out of time.
If I can move for 15 minutes?
Okay, 15 minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I know we had two hands still up. Stephanie, it's your question? Okay, John?
Well, I had asked Virginia if we, when she came by, if the county is part, if we've applied for those grants, have the capability of the grants, and she said that she thinks it's with the Water Management District.
Yeah, are you talking about DEP grants or St. John's Water Management District grants?
There's a lot of different
For the
grants out
upgrade.
there, so both of those, and there's the springs, which you can sort of squish into other,
So my conversation that we could not tap into the Springs money, so the only money that I'm aware of that we could apply for would be Water Management District at the 33% cost share.
Robert, you said something that I think struck me all of a sudden. Every home built in Brevard County prior to 1983 on a septic tank is probably completely ineffective in reducing any nitrogen flow into the Indian River Lagoon, which is everything that was built during the Apollo period. Right?
Yeah, and what adds to that is the way the state law is written, and unless Brevard County, which I sat on a septic tank board 20 years ago here to the Brevard County as a committee, but I don't remember them changing anything. But in, say, Indian River County, if you can go right back and put the same exact system right back in place again. I always thought you had to upgrade it but you don't. You can put the same exact system right back in place because now you as a county can change that and require it, and the local health department would have to enforce it. But unless you put that into place, they can go right back in there and replace it exactly what they have.
So age was one of the other 5 factors, and we looked at the 6-inch ability up until 1983, and then it went to 12 inches from 1983 to 86, 87, right? And so that was part of our.
And I think your modeling shows that too, because that became a big issue when we first started modeling all of Indian River County, and now you have Brevard County, and all the counties have been done. But in Vero, it was 67% of the homes were built prior to 1983, so it was a big problem.
So we've got 15,000, and our goal is about 3,000 of them, and that's where forgetting about past 150 feet, our focus needs to be on those 15,000 septic systems that are absolutely ineffective dumping into the river, either moving them to septic or using a different system or using step to septic. And that's the funding that we have, and hopefully some additional funding, and that's probably one of the biggest impacts that we as a committee can have, in my personal opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks to our panel.
I have a question.
Oh, wait, John has one last question.
It's a question probably to you, Virginia. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, are we getting smart on technology and science and seagrass and Dr. Muck and all that stuff. Is Tetra Tech staying equally smart? Are they listening? Do they have the expertise in-house to effectively move this body of really smart knowledge into our lagoon plan?
They are listening, and they do have a lot of talent in-house. If they don't have the talent we need, we will get the talent we need.
This is being monitored. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got Vinny up next with an update, and then the project video. Are we actually going to see the video today?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll go here as I'm typing, and you guys can watch what I'm typing, because this is something new. As Virginia wrote, we met, Virginia, myself, Walker, and Courtney met with Lois, who is the director of IT. Did I get her title? No. Assistant Director of IT. Sorry, Director, and sorry, Lois. But anyways, I would like to thank Lois. She's been very helpful in helping us get the updates. And we had a discussion with her on a few topics. This is one of them. If you guys look and see what I type, if you haven't, I'll read it to you. It says, saveourlagoon.brevardfl.gov. It's what's called a third level domain, or a TLD. And basically, if they type that in, that will take them right to our page. We had talked about doing saveourlagoon.gov. The problem with that is .gov is controlled by the federal government, and they try to make names that are identifiable to locations. And since it's just lagoon, and there's probably, I don't know, what do you think, 2 lagoons in America, maybe 2 or 3? It would be a fight between us and the other 2 or 3 to get that name. So instead of doing the saveourlagoon.gov, because it probably would be very hard to get, we added a third level domain. So you can now go to saveourlagoon.brevardfl.gov to get to the home page. And then we now have the dashboard link here. If you click on it, you will see that we have our numbers on top, which 14 million needs to be changed to 17 million. I will get that updated. And then the new thermometers down there with the times, like we talked about, so people can realize it's a 10-hour or 10-year project, not hour. And then the money, there's little red arrows, and the amounts that appear as that thermometer goes up. One of the cool things with this is whenever I do something, I want to make sure that it can be upgradable and can be done by the department. So the top part is simple text. So to be able to change that really takes about 5 minutes. You just type in text. These graphics have been given to the IT department in a file, in a format that they can update whenever needs to be. So that's no longer in my hands, it's now in the county's hands and should be able to be done fairly quickly. You'll also see down here, there is a scoreboard that we have added. And when you click it, this was the area, I think John had said that there were too many charts and graphs and he was getting a little lost. So what we decided to do was kind of separate it out where you've got your big numbers up front and then you've got whatever scientific data or scoreboard we want to put here. These are only 3 of the ones that we chose. Some of the other ones, they need more activity, I guess, to really show what the chart is. But these are ones that that can show now. This is a broken axis chart. It was what we talked about where the money for muck removal was so high compared to everything else. So the axis is broken, but you can still see the money spent on the other areas. So that was quick there. There still are some other charts that we'll look at implementing. The county is in the process of upgrading their website template, something that's more responsive to mobile devices. So when that goes over, which is I think in a couple months, then we'll make sure that all these charts and everything fit nice and look nice and are the right size, so that they're viewable. That was one of the things we talked about. We also talked about the map that we want to do, and then we talked about online applications. Our goal is we've got a workshop coming up in October, So next month, we want to show you guys the online application to get feedback, and then we'll turn it live. So that way it will be ready for the workshop for people to actually see how they'll be able to apply online. Also, a short video that I was going to put together instructional about who can apply and how to apply. I'll have the script for that and maybe a rough draft next month again for you guys to look at and give me some feedback. And then after we do that in September, then for the October, we'll look at having the map app ready, unless we can get it ready for September. So look at phasing things in one at a time. I think that was, so I can be quick, that's all.
Great.
Is there any
That was great.
any feedback?
Great stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
You didn't adopt my balloon graphic.
It's coming, it's coming. I had to find the right balloon, David. I had to find the right balloon.
The right colors.
Yeah, the right colors. Thank you.
Okay, and now we're going to look at the video.
Yep. So you guys are the first ones to see it. It hasn't been released to the public yet. There's going to be two small minor changes. One, there's going to be logos added, and I'm also going to be dropping the volume of the music just a little bit. Is there any chance we can get this a little bit louder? There we go. All right.
Today we're at the receiving end of a dredging project in Melbourne. We're dredging the Ogallie River, which is a tributary of the Indian River Lagoon. And what we have here is a containment area where we're pumping muck that has settled into the Ogallie River over the decades. And what muck is a gooey black sediment. Looks a lot like black mayonnaise, not really nice stuff to look at. It causes problems in the lagoon and tributaries like the Ogallie River in that it is filled with nutrients, which can help contribute to algae blooms. It clogs boat motor engines because they use water to intake. It'll clog navigation channels. And plants and animals tend to avoid areas that have muck in them. So you have areas of the ecosystem that really aren't that good quality. And it's not very nice just for recreation. You sort of want to avoid when you're stepping into muck that in some cases is 12 feet thick. So behind me, we're moving some of this muck to a permanent location so that they can make room to pump more muck. About 4 miles away from us, out east of us at the Ogallie River, there's a machine called a dredge. The dredge is sucking the muck up from the bottom of the Ogallie River and Elbow Creek, which is a tributary off the Ogallie River. And it's pumping that muck mixed with water. You need the water to make the muck flow through the pipe to this site. So it'll have great benefits, obviously, to the lagoon. By the end of 2018, there'll be 632,000 cubic yards, give or take, pumped out of just that one tributary. And when you consider that a dump truck contains about 40 cubic yards, you're talking tens of thousands of dump truck loads of this muck that has washed into the Indian River Lagoon. So it's taken decades for this kind of problem to occur, and it's going to take some time to get it up.
Courtney has a city manager page, and this is going to be posted on there. It looks much better and sounds much better than on this speaker and with the projector. So definitely check it out and share it on Facebook.
It's not there yet, though?
It's not there yet. We still have to put some logos on the back end, and I'm going to be dropping the music. So I'm not dropping it, but making it quieter. And so check that within the next week here, and hope you guys enjoyed it.
Okay, great, thank you. Item B, the opportunity to accelerate project delivery. Virginia, is that?
Thank you. So, and I know we're way over. I wanted some direction from the board. Now that you've seen a couple of these videos, is this the kind of, is this one of the tools that you want us to use for sharing information about projects? Okay, because if I could have direction on that, that would be very helpful.
This is helping spend the $650K that we have for
Public education.
That is specifically for fertilizer reduction.
Okay.
This would be out of the respond money.
Mm-hmm. And a video of this length is, what's the cost on that?
What's the cost?
Well, it depends on what really is entailed in making the video, travel-wise, how many days, how many people are involved.
There isn't any, I mean, there used to
just
be like
put a
$1,000 a minute round figure. There isn't
many
anything like
zeros, how
that.
many
Anything
commas?
rough?
I mean, that one right there is $600.
What a deal. I mean, how many of those could we do?
Can you bring forward a proposal for us to vote on?
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, Vinny can probably verify this, but I understand that having video on your website is just a way to entice, keep someone there longer.
You've got, if you go to a webpage and you look at text, or you go to a webpage and look at video, I mean, the amount of attention played, given, you can't even really compare it. And I think as we talked about, one video, at least one video like that per project, really gives an idea to the citizens of what is involved. You know, like they may see the boat out on the Indian River dredging, but they don't know where it goes. And maybe they go, oh, we don't have a plan for it, and you know, they have no idea. So if we can tell them, or they can see a video, I think it really helps the education. And the education is what's going to help propel this project long after John and I are gone. Is that ever going to happen?
Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring that back in the next meeting. On the opportunities to accelerate project delivery, so we've said that's how we want to take these funds that are coming in faster than anticipated. So specifically, I wanted to look through the plan, look at all the projects that are currently scheduled in year 2 and year 3, and go ahead and authorize the design and permitting funds now to get those projects ready. And then if these dollars continue to roll in faster and we can start construction early, we'll be ready to start construction early.
Do you need a motion to that effect, or just?
Let me run through all of these, and then maybe you could do one motion.
Okay.
Next, on the muck permitting, we've talked about the long, arduous process required to get muck permits. We've been talking to some consultants about going for a master muck dredging permit for all muck in the Indian River Lagoon in Brevard County. It would be, you know, a more intensive permitting process up front, but then hopefully it would cover us for, we're talking about a 15-year window. And so it would potentially save us money spent on permitting down the road, but move some of those costs up front and give us the ability to move projects along faster once we had it.
Matt, is that going to require like some help from our congressman or something? I mean, that's way out of way out of their norm, but I love the idea.
Our initial conversations with the consultant who could potentially handle this would involve, their job would involve that exact kind of acting as liaison to the government entities to get that going.
Would this include residential canals?
It depends on the method, and we'll have to get more into that in sort of the first phase of the scope of work. In order to get a master permit, the narrower the methodology is, the more likely we will be to succeed in a reasonable time frame. A lot of the canal dredging actually requires different equipment that has additional manatee concerns that the open water dredging doesn't. So that's one of those things, we don't want to make that concession, but if we need to move this along, we would.
So instead of a permit, a process over and over, we're going to go for a master, and then whenever we raise the money, we'll go in and do what we want to do. If you can pull it off, I'll recommend we do that.
Has that ever been done?
It's done in reef.
Not locally.
Not specifically for muck permitting and not in the Indian River Lagoon, but there are master permits for other sorts of environmental work.
With the same agencies that were...
With the same agencies through all the NEPA process. And one of the things that this will do is you start, instead of starting at the staff levels in all those different agencies where, you know, this is the sandbox that they have to play in, you start at the agency heads. Here's the concept. We are trying to restore health to the Indian River Lagoon. We're trying to do that as quickly as possible. Here's the kind of flexibility we need you to tell your staff they can have. And so I'm hopeful that by having those conversations, regardless of how long it takes us to get this master permit, it may help provide some flexibility to the staff that are continuing to review the permits that we have on their.
Okay, I'm going to need a motion to extend the meeting again.
How much time do we need?
Well, we
I
have
have-
public comments.
I move we extend the meeting 15 minutes.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. So do we need a motion to move forward on this? Okay.
You want to keep grouping these together?
Yes. Yeah. All right. The third one is what I talked about at the beginning is contracting with MRC to do the muck finders in the canals, and then with FIT to contract for the quick flux to prioritize muck in the canal so that we know what canals to go get permits for first. And the fourth thing is setting up a contingency for cost overruns. So right now, if we get into a project and there is no other source of funding for that project, and we have a cost overrun, we will have a real problem. So I would like to establish a contingency that we can go to, and you can set parameters on that, and we can, bring that back and talk about it more next month. But I just wanted to get you all thinking about that need and possible solutions.
So do you want to suggest the contingency, or I'm not sure, or you're going to come back with suggested boundaries for the contingency?
The other things she listed were pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
If you guys want to do a motion to pass those, and then we could always talk about the contingency at next month's, or.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So do we have a motion?
I move to recommend Virginia's first three ideas, and to put the fourth contingency for overrun on discussion for next month.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
And you're going to tell
Okay.
us how you manage the contingency funds, how overruns are managed.
Yes.
Recommend bonding parameters.
Okay, so I think we can open it up to general comment. If there are any questions from the audience, we still have our experts here as well. If you would come to the mic. George?
My name is George Rosenfield. I like to think I'm still an environmental scientist. I have two items. First, I'd like to thank John Byron for that wonderful column in the newspaper, and I'd like to see it continue on a monthly basis with a resume of what the meeting and progress report on our Indian River Lagoon, if it's possible to continue it on a monthly basis. It's beautiful. On the panel discussion, I have the Vero Beach system seems to be a nice way to retrofit communities, septic tank communities, into the sewer system. But the other is a community cannot, on itself, a new community, develop something new, if it's isolated, can either be put by the county on the sewer system, or it can have its own sewer system. Back in the 1950s, when I lived in Sea Park and TaylorMade, known at that time, had its own sewer treatment plant, and everything was on a local sewer system, so that could be developed at any time. So, but an
think it's the levels of treatment.
isolated houses or isolated estates or whatever could have their own septic tank system, and maybe the newer one is good for that. But to replace, retrofit the Vero beach system seemed to be good. That's all,
Okay.
that's all the time I wanted to take. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any other comments from the audience? Yes.
Hi, Lou Kontnick is my name. And I think this is the first time I've been here. Terrific, fabulous, great panel. The question that I wanted to pose was, have we examined, whoever, whether it's staff or, have we examined the capability of the Brevard sewage treatment facilities and their capability to handle, both what's planned and the potential for maybe increasing that and maybe even dramatically under what sounds like the Good Step program. So is our infrastructure up to the job? Thanks.
Virginia or Matt, do you want to respond?
We analyzed whether our infrastructure could handle what was recommended for funding in the plan. We would need to do some more work to look at how much additional capacity is out there.
Okay.
And just real quick, is the waste department, did they know that, like, maybe Rob was going to come and talk or other people? Are they up on the STEP sewer programs? Are they engaged in a conversation on what can be done?
I've been coordinating with them, during development of the plan and in several conversations that we've had, but we'll continue to do that.
Okay. Yeah, and I have a quick question for Roxanne. So it's going to be a while before we can really get a handle on the septic issue here, and we're in crisis now, another fish kill in the Banana River. I'm relatively new to the area without septics and no knowledge of what the best practices are with the septic system. I mean, where is that education?
We're not, yeah, it is on. We actually have what we call the Magic Box, and it's available, for people that have a conventional system. That's available through our site. We also have PSAs that talk about what your typical on-site conventional system what kind of maintenance it should have and things like that. We have both a 30 and a 60 second that we'd be willing to give to your group that they can utilize and things like that. So there are lots of tools, and then the EPA has put together Septic SAM. I think it's Septic SAM, and I want to say every September we reach out to the communities to try to get them to adopt a Septic SAM so that their residents understand what they need to be doing for their conventional systems to at least make sure it's doing what it's supposed to as a conventional system. So we have all those tools available at no charge to your folks. Right now, the Septic Magic Box is going to be in an electronic format, so they'll have to print it out. But we have all those tools available.
Okay, well, that would be great we have education groups in the area, too, to get more of that information out during these crisis periods that are great learning moments.
Could add to the communications directive to digitize that information and get that online?
Yeah, I mean, that type of stuff would be great for the Facebook Master Resource Management Facebook page once we get that going. And we have the process, we just need to make sure we have the people, and once we do. But stuff like that would be great for us to put on the page. And then again, maybe every September, it's on the calendar that this gets posted again and gets shared again, and then that way it becomes routine.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, I think we will adjourn.
Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.